Baby saw 2 German Shepherds. Shivering in front of coming train, what he did next left everyone in tears. What happened at that small train station on a cold October morning will shock you to your core. Before we begin this incredible story, hit that like button, share with your friends, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. The morning started like any other, in the quiet town of Millbrook. 5-year-old Tommy Walker had been awake since 5:30, too excited to sleep any longer. Today was special. Today was the day his mother, Sarah, had finally agreed he was old enough to take the train to visit Grandma Rose all by himself. Well, not completely by himself. His mother would put him on the train, and Grandma Rose would be waiting at the next station, just 20 minutes away. But to Tommy, this felt like the biggest adventure of his young life. Sarah Walker stood in the kitchen, nervously checking and rechecking the small backpack she had prepared for her son. Inside was his favorite sandwich, peanut butter and strawberry jam, cut into perfect triangles just the way he liked it. There was also a juice box, some crackers, and most importantly, the note with all the phone numbers written in big, clear numbers that Tommy had practiced reading over and over again the night before. "Mommy, can we go now?" Tommy asked for what must have been the 10th time that morning. He was already dressed in his favorite blue jacket, the one with the train printed on the back that Grandma Rose had given him for his 5th birthday just 2 months ago. In his small hands, he clutched Mr. Buttons, his worn teddy bear that had been with him since he was a baby. The bear's brown fur was faded in places from years of hugs, and one eye was slightly loose. But to Tommy, Mr. Buttons was perfect. Sarah looked at her son and felt her heart squeeze with both pride and worry. Tommy had grown so much in the past year. After his grandfather passed away last spring, the little boy had become more serious, more thoughtful. He would often sit by the window, holding Mr. Buttons and talk to the bear about Grandpa Joe. Sarah had overheard him once, telling the bear all about how Grandpa used to teach him things, how to be gentle with animals, how to be brave even when you're scared, how to help others even when it's hard. "Just let me grab my purse, sweetheart," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. She had been dreading this day and looking forward to it at the same time. Her little boy was growing up, and she knew she had to let him spread his wings, even if it was just a 20-minute train ride to the next town. The walk to the train station took 15 minutes. Tommy practically bounced with each step, his backpack jumping on his small shoulders. He kept talking about all the things he would do with Grandma Rose. She had promised to take him to the park with the big pond where the ducks lived. She had also said she would make his favorite cookies, the ones with chocolate chips and little pieces of candy that looked like rainbow drops. The Millbrook train station was old but well maintained. The red brick building had been there for over 100 years, and the wooden benches on the platform had been polished smooth by thousands of travelers over the decades. This morning, the platform was busier than usual. It was Thursday, and many people were heading to the city for work. Men in suits checked their phones while sipping coffee from paper cups. Women in office clothes talked on their phones, their voices mixing with the general buzz of morning conversation. Tommy held his mother's hand tightly as they walked through the crowd. Everything seemed so big and busy from his height. He could smell coffee and perfume and the faint scent of diesel from the trains. The platform was cold, and he could see his breath making little clouds in the air. He thought it looked like he was a dragon breathing smoke, and this made him giggle. Sarah led Tommy to a bench near the middle of the platform. She wanted to make sure they were in a good spot where the conductor would easily see them when the train arrived. She sat down and pulled Tommy close to her, wrapping her arm around his small shoulders. "Now, remember what we practiced," she said, looking into his bright blue eyes. "When you get on the train, you find a seat near the conductor. You don't talk to strangers except to say, 'Excuse me,' if you need to pass by. And what do you do when you hear your station?" "I stand up and wait by the door, but I don't push the button until the train stops completely," Tommy recited perfectly. He had been practicing this for weeks. "That's right, my smart boy," Sarah said, kissing the top of his head. His hair smelled like the strawberry shampoo from his bath the night before. "And Grandma Rose will be right there on the platform waiting for you." Tommy nodded seriously, then his face broke into a huge grin. "And then we're going to see the ducks." Sarah laughed despite her nervousness. "Yes, the ducks. Just remember to save some bread for them. Don't eat it all yourself like last time." Tommy giggled at the memory. Last time they had visited Grandma Rose together, he had gotten so hungry on the walk to the pond that he had eaten all the bread meant for the ducks. Grandma Rose had laughed, and they had to go back to her house to get more bread. As they sat there waiting, Sarah noticed that Tommy kept looking around the platform with curious eyes. He was always such an observant child, noticing things that adults often missed. She watched as his gaze followed a pigeon pecking at crumbs near a trash can, then moved to watch an old man with a cane slowly making his way to a bench, then to a mother with a baby in a stroller. "Mommy, why is that man talking to himself?" Tommy whispered, pointing to a businessman who was wearing wireless earbuds and having a phone conversation. Sarah smiled. "He's talking on the phone, sweetheart. See the little things in his ears? Those are special phones." Tommy's eyes went wide with wonder. "Phones in your ears? That's so cool." Just then, Sarah remembered she needed to buy Tommy's ticket. She had meant to do it online the night before, but their internet had been down. She looked at her watch. They still had 20 minutes before the train was supposed to arrive. "Tommy, I need to go inside to the ticket office to buy your ticket. You stay right here on this bench, okay? Don't move. I'll be right back. I can see you through the window." Tommy nodded, clutching Mister. Buttons tighter. "I'll be brave, Mommy. Mr. Buttons and I will wait right here." Sarah hesitated for a moment. The ticket office was just inside the station building, and she could indeed see the bench through the large window. There were so many people around, and Tommy was such a good boy. He always listened to instructions. "I'll be back in 2 minutes, okay? If you need anything, you see that man in the uniform?" She pointed to a station officer standing near the information board. "That's Mr. Harris. He works here. He can help you." Tommy looked at Mr. Harris, who was a tall man with gray hair and a kind face. The officer noticed them looking and gave a little wave, which Tommy shyly returned. Sarah stood up, smoothed down her coat, and walked quickly toward the station building. She turned back twice to look at Tommy, who was sitting exactly where she left him, swinging his legs and making Mr. Buttons dance on his lap. The moment his mother disappeared into the building, Tommy felt a little flutter of nervousness in his stomach. The platform suddenly seemed much bigger and louder. He hugged Mr. Buttons closer and started to count to 100 in his head, something Grandpa Joe had taught him to do when he felt scared. 1, 2, 3, he whispered to himself, watching his breath make little puffs in the cold air. 4, 5, 6. That's when he saw them. At first, Tommy thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Near the far end of the platform, where the crowd was thinner and the morning shadows were longer, he saw movement. Not the usual movement of people walking or birds flying, but something else. Something that made him stop counting and lean forward on the bench. 2 dogs were there, pressed against the wall where the platform met the train tracks. Even from where he sat, Tommy could see they were shaking. Not just shivering from the cold, but shaking like they were very, very scared. Tommy stood up on the bench to see better, holding on to the back for balance. The dogs were German Shepherds, like the ones he had seen in his favorite movie about a boy and his dog. But these dogs didn't look strong and proud like the one in the movie. These dogs looked hurt and frightened. The bigger dog was sitting in a strange way, keeping one of its back legs off the ground. Its fur was dirty and matted in places. The smaller dog, which looked younger, was pressed close against the bigger one, as if trying to keep it warm. Both dogs had collars, but even from this distance, Tommy could see the collars were torn and muddy. Tommy looked around. Nobody else seemed to have noticed the dogs. Everyone was too busy with their phones or their newspapers or their conversations. He looked back at the station building. Through the window, he could see his mother still standing in line at the ticket office. There were 3 people ahead of her. He looked back at the dogs. The smaller one had lifted its head and was looking around with scared eyes. Its ears were flat against its head, and Tommy could see its ribs showing through its fur. They looked like they hadn't eaten in days. "Poor doggies," Tommy whispered to Mr. Buttons. "They look so sad and scared." Tommy knew he had promised to stay on the bench, but the dogs looked like they really needed help. He remembered what Grandpa Joe used to say. Sometimes, Tommy boy, doing the right thing means breaking a small rule to follow a bigger one. The biggest rule is to help those who can't help themselves. Still, Tommy hesitated. His mother would be upset if he moved from the bench. But the dogs, they looked so helpless. And they were wearing collars, which meant they belonged to someone. Someone was probably looking for them. Worried sick. Tommy made a decision. He would just walk a little closer to see if the dogs were okay. He wouldn't go far, just close enough to see if they had tags on their collars with phone numbers. Then he would go right back to the bench and tell his mother when she came back. Holding Mr. Buttons tightly, Tommy climbed down from the bench and started walking slowly toward the end of the platform. He had to weave between adults saying, "Excuse me," in his small voice when he needed to pass. Most people moved aside without even looking down to see who was speaking. As Tommy got closer to the dogs, he could see more details that made his heart hurt. The bigger dog's leg was definitely injured. There was dried blood on its fur and the leg was swollen. The smaller dog kept licking the bigger one's face, as if trying to comfort it. Tommy stopped about 10 feet away from the dogs. He didn't want to scare them by getting too close too fast. Grandpa Joe had taught him that scared animals needed time to see that you weren't a threat. "Hi, doggies," Tommy said in his softest, gentlest voice. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." Both dogs looked at him. The smaller one's tail gave a tiny, hopeful wag, but the bigger one growled low in its throat. It was a weak growl, more of a warning than a threat, as if the dog was using the last of its strength to protect its companion. Tommy slowly sat down on the cold platform, making himself smaller and less threatening. This was another thing Grandpa Joe had taught him. When you meet a scared animal, Grandpa had said, make yourself small and quiet. Let them come to you. "It's okay," Tommy said again, holding out his hand slowly, palm up. "I'm Tommy. This is Mr. Buttons. We want to help you." The smaller dog took a tiny step forward, then looked back at the bigger one as if asking permission. The bigger dog had stopped growling and was watching Tommy with tired, pain-filled eyes. That's when Tommy heard it, a sound that made his blood run cold, a train horn, distant but clear, echoing through the morning air. Tommy looked down the tracks and could see a tiny light in the distance. A train was coming. He looked at the electronic board above the platform. The next train wasn't supposed to arrive for 15 minutes. This must be a freight train, or an express train that didn't stop at Millbrook. The dogs were right next to the tracks. If they got scared when the train came through... Tommy stood up quickly, his heart starting to race. He looked back toward the bench where he was supposed to be sitting. He couldn't see his mother through the window anymore. She must have moved to a different part of the ticket office. He looked at Mr. Harris, the station officer, but he was now on the other side of the platform, helping an elderly lady with her luggage. The train horn sounded again, closer this time. Tommy looked back at the dogs. The smaller one had moved a little closer to him, but the bigger one was trying to stand up, putting weight on its injured leg and whimpering in pain. They were trying to move away from the tracks, but the bigger dog could barely walk. No, stay there," Tommy said. But he realized that was wrong. They needed to move away from the tracks, not stay near them. "I mean, come here. Come this way." The smaller dog seemed to understand and took another step toward Tommy, but then stopped and went back to the bigger dog, nudging it with its nose, trying to help it stand. The train horn sounded again, much louder. Tommy could feel the platform starting to vibrate slightly under his feet. The train was maybe 2 minutes away. Tommy's mind raced. He needed to get help, but there wasn't time. He needed to get the dogs away from the tracks, but the big one couldn't walk. He was just a little boy. What could he do? Then he remembered something else Grandpa Joe had told him, something that had seemed silly at the time, but now felt very important. "Tommy boy," Grandpa had said, "being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. Being brave means you do what's right even when you're so scared your knees are shaking." Tommy's knees were definitely shaking, but he knew what he had to do. He walked closer to the dogs, moving slowly but deliberately. The smaller dog wagged its tail a little more, seeming to sense that Tommy wanted to help. The bigger dog watched him warily, but didn't growl again. "Okay, doggies," Tommy said, trying to keep his voice calm, even though his heart was pounding so hard he thought it might jump out of his chest. "We need to move. The train is coming." He reached out and gently touched the smaller dog's head. Its fur was cold and matted, but the dog leaned into his touch, desperate for kindness. Tommy could feel the collar, and he turned it, looking for tags. There was one, metal and scratched, with writing on it. Tommy squinted at the tag. He had just learned to read last year, and some of the letters were hard to make out because they were so scratched. But he could see a name, Luna. "Luna?" Tommy said, and the smaller dog's ears perked up. "Is that your name?" "Luna?" The dog's tail wagged more enthusiastically. Tommy looked at the bigger dog. "And what's your name?" He knew he had to be more careful with this one. The dog was in pain and scared, but he needed to see its tag too. Moving very slowly, Tommy extended his hand toward the bigger dog. "It's okay. I just want to see your name. I won't hurt you." The dog watched him with those tired, pain-filled eyes, but didn't move away. Tommy gently touched its collar, feeling for the tag. This one was harder to read, but he could make out 3 letters. Max. "Max and Luna," Tommy said. "Those are nice names. My name is Tommy, and we're going to be friends, okay?" The platform was vibrating more now. Tommy could hear the train getting closer, the sound of its engine growing louder. Other people on the platform were starting to move back from the edge, the way they always did when an express train was about to pass through without stopping. Tommy knew he was running out of time. He tried to think like Grandpa Joe would think. What would Grandpa do? Then he remembered the sandwich in his backpack. Dogs like food. Maybe he could use the sandwich to get them to follow him away from the tracks. Tommy quickly pulled off his backpack and unzipped it. His hands were shaking so much he almost dropped it. He pulled out the sandwich his mother had made, unwrapped it from its plastic bag, and broke off a piece. "Look, Luna! Look, Max! Food!" He held out the piece of sandwich. Luna's nose twitched, and she took a step toward him. But she stopped and looked back at Max, who was trying again to stand up. The big dog managed to get on 3 legs, but Tommy could see he was in terrible pain. The train horn blared again, so loud that several people on the platform covered their ears. Tommy could see the train now, probably less than a minute away, its headlight bright even in the morning sun. "Please," Tommy begged the dogs. "Please come with me. Please." Luna grabbed the piece of sandwich gently from Tommy's hand, but instead of eating it, she carried it back to Max and dropped it in front of him. The gesture was so sweet and sad that Tommy felt tears spring to his eyes. Even starving, Luna wanted to take care of Max first. That's when Tommy made the decision that would change everything. He couldn't wait any longer. He couldn't coax them gently. He had to act now. Tommy dropped his backpack and missed her, buttons on the platform, and moved quickly to Luna. She was smaller, lighter. He could carry her. He scooped her up in his arms, surprised at how light she was. She must have been starving for days to be this thin. Luna didn't struggle. She seemed to understand that Tommy was trying to help. But she whined and looked back at Max, struggling in Tommy's arms to return to her friend. "I'll come back for Max," Tommy promised, carrying Luna away from the edge of the platform. "I promise I'll come back." He set Luna down about 6 feet from the edge, what he hoped was a safe distance. "Stay," he said firmly, the way Grandpa Joe had taught him to speak to dogs. "Stay right here." Luna sat but continued whining, her eyes fixed on Max. Tommy turned and ran back to Max. The platform was shaking hard now. The train was maybe 30 seconds away. People were starting to notice what was happening. Tommy heard someone shout, but he couldn't make out the words over the noise of the approaching train. Max was still standing on 3 legs, swaying slightly. He was bigger than Luna, probably weighing almost as much as Tommy himself. There was no way Tommy could carry him, but Tommy had to try. He moved to Max's good side and tried to put his small arms around the dog's chest. "Come on, Max. Please, we have to move." Max took one hobbling step, then another, but it was too slow. They weren't going to make it. The train horn blared one more time, deafeningly loud. The headlight was blinding. The platform was shaking so hard Tommy could barely keep his balance. That's when Tommy did something that even he couldn't quite believe later. He pulled off his favorite jacket, the one with the train on the back that Grandma Rose had given him, and threw it over Max's head, covering the dog's eyes. "If you can't see it, it won't scare you," Tommy said, remembering something Grandpa Joe had done once with a scared horse. Then, with strength he didn't know he had, Tommy grabbed Max around the middle and pulled. The dog was heavy, so heavy, but Tommy pulled with everything he had. His feet slipped on the platform. His arms felt like they were going to break. But he pulled. 1 inch, 2 inches, a foot. The train was right there, so close Tommy could feel the wind from it pushing against him. Someone was screaming. Multiple people were screaming. Tommy thought one of the voices might be his mother's, but he couldn't be sure over the noise of the train. Tommy pulled harder, his small muscles straining beyond their limit. Max, unable to see because of the jacket over his head, had stopped resisting and was letting Tommy drag him. 2 feet, 3 feet. The train thundered past, inches from where Max had been standing. The wind from it knocked Tommy backward and he fell, Max's weight landing partly on top of him. The jacket flew off Max's head and disappeared in the wind from the train. Tommy couldn't breathe. Max was too heavy. But then suddenly the weight was gone, and strong hands were pulling Tommy up, away from the edge, away from danger. "Are you insane, kid?" a man's voice was saying. "You could have been killed." Tommy's vision was blurry with tears he didn't remember starting to cry. He could hear his mother's voice now, definitely his mother, screaming his name, but all he could think about was, "Max!" Tommy struggled in the arms holding him. "Luna! Are they okay?" He blinked hard, clearing his vision, and saw that the man holding him was James, one of the railway workers. James's face was white with shock and fear. "The dogs are fine, kid." "They're fine. But what were you thinking?" Tommy turned his head and saw Max lying on the platform, panting hard but alive. Luna had run to him and was licking his face frantically. They were both safe. They were both alive. That's when his mother reached them. "Tommy!" Sarah fell to her knees and grabbed her son, pulling him into a hug so tight he could barely breathe. She was crying, sobbing really, her whole body shaking. "What were you doing? You promised to stay on the bench. You could have died. You could have—" She couldn't finish the sentence, just held him tighter, as if she was trying to convince herself he was really there, really safe. "I'm sorry, Mommy," Tommy said, his own tears flowing freely now, but the doggies needed help. They were scared and hurt, and the train was coming, and nobody else saw them, and I remembered what Grandpa Joe said about helping those who can't help themselves, and— "Shh, shh, it's okay," Sarah said, though it clearly wasn't okay. She was still crying, still shaking. "You're safe. That's all that matters. You're safe." By now, a crowd had gathered around them. Everyone was talking at once, some praising Tommy for his bravery, others scolding him for taking such a dangerous risk. Someone had called the station security and Mr. Harris was pushing through the crowd. "What happened here?" Mr. Harris asked, his kind face now serious and concerned. James, the railway worker, explained what he had seen, how Tommy had risked his life to save the 2 dogs from the express train. As he told the story, more people in the crowd started recording with their phones, sensing this was something special. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen," an elderly woman said, tears in her eyes. "That little boy is a hero." "He's lucky to be alive," a businessman countered. "That was incredibly dangerous." Tommy wasn't paying attention to any of them. He was watching Max and Luna. Luna had curled up next to Max, trying to keep him warm. Max's eyes were closed, and he was breathing heavily. The effort of trying to move had exhausted him. "Mommy," Tommy said, tugging on his mother's sleeve. "Max is hurt bad. His leg is all swollen, and they're both so skinny. They haven't eaten in a long time." Sarah looked at the dogs for the first time, really looked at them. Her anger at Tommy for putting himself in danger was warring with her compassion for the obviously suffering animals. "They have collars," she noted. "They belong to someone." Tommy nodded eagerly. "I saw tags. Luna and Max are their names. But I couldn't read the phone number. It was too scratched up." Mr. Harris had moved closer to examine the dogs. He knelt down slowly, speaking in a calm voice. "Hey there, pups. Let's see what we have here." Luna growled weakly, protective of Max, even though she was clearly the younger and smaller of the 2. "It's okay, Luna," Tommy said, moving closer. "Mr. Harris is nice. He wants to help." At the sound of Tommy's voice, Luna's tail wagged slightly and she stopped growling. Mr. Harris gently examined the tags, pulling out his phone to use its flashlight to see better. "There's a phone number here, but it's pretty worn." "I can make out most of it, though." He started dialing. While Mr. Harris made the call, Sarah finally released Tommy from her death grip hug, though she kept one hand firmly on his shoulder, as if afraid he might run off again. "Tommy," she said, her voice serious, "what you did was very brave, but it was also very dangerous. You could have been killed." "I know, Mommy," Tommy said, looking down at his feet. "But Max couldn't walk fast enough. The train was coming. I had to do something." You could have called for help. You could have told an adult. There wasn't time, Tommy protested. The train was right there. And nobody was paying attention. Everyone was looking at their phones or talking. Nobody saw Max and Luna except me. Sarah wanted to argue, but she knew her son was right. She had been in the ticket office. Everyone else had been absorbed in their own morning routines. If Tommy hadn't acted, she shuddered, not wanting to think about what would have happened to the dogs, or what could have happened to her son. Mr. Harris finished his call and walked back to them, his expression puzzled. That's strange. The number just rings and rings. No answer, no voicemail. Maybe their owner is at work, Sarah suggested. Maybe, Mr. Harris said, but he looked doubtful. These dogs have been out here for a while, from the look of them. That injured leg isn't a fresh wound. I'd say it's at least 2 or 3 days old. 3 days? Tommy gasped. They've been lost for 3 days? Looks like it, Mr. Harris said. He pulled out his radio. I'm going to call Animal Control. They can take the dogs to the shelter, get them medical attention. No, Tommy said loudly, then caught himself. I mean, please don't send them to the shelter. What if their owner is looking for them? What if they're scared in the shelter? Son, that big one needs medical attention, Mr. Harris said gently. The shelter has vets who can help. Tommy looked at Max and Luna, huddled together on the cold platform. Even after everything, they stayed close to each other. Luna kept licking Max's face, and Max, despite his pain, kept trying to position himself protectively over the smaller dog. They love each other, Tommy said softly. Look how they take care of each other. Sarah's heart melted little at her son's compassion. This was Joe's influence, she knew. Her late father-in-law had been the same way, unable to turn away from any creature in need. Mr. Harris, she said, is there any way we could take them to a vet ourselves? I'll pay for it, and we can keep trying that phone number. Mr. Harris looked surprised. Well, I suppose that would be okay. But are you sure? Vet bills can be expensive, especially for injuries like this. Sarah looked at Tommy's hopeful face, then at the dogs. I'm sure. The crowd around them had grown larger, and several people started clapping. Someone shouted, I'll help with the vet bills, and others voiced similar offers. Tommy's eyes went wide. All these strangers wanted to help Max and Luna too. Thank you, he said to the crowd, his small voice carrying surprising strength. Max and Luna will be so happy. Just then, there was another commotion. A woman in a train conductor's uniform was pushing through the crowd. Is everyone okay here? We got a report that someone was on the tracks when the express came through. Mr. Harris quickly explained the situation. The conductor's eyes went wide as she listened. That little boy pulled a German Shepherd away from an oncoming train? She asked in disbelief. He did, James confirmed. I saw the whole thing. I've never seen anything like it. The kid's got more courage than most adults I know. The conductor looked at Tommy with a mixture of admiration and concern. Young man, that was incredibly brave, but also incredibly dangerous. You're very lucky. I know, Tommy said, but I had to help them. They couldn't help themselves. The conductor's expression softened. Well, I think we can delay the 8:47 for a few minutes while we get these dogs some help. Let me radio the station master. While the adults figured out logistics, Tommy knelt down next to Max and Luna. Luna immediately came to him, crawling into his lap despite being far too big to fit comfortably. She was shaking from cold or fear or both. It's okay now, Tommy whispered to her. You're safe. Both of you are safe. Max opened his eyes and looked at Tommy. For a moment, boy and dog just stared at each other. Then Max's tail gave the tiniest wag, just a slight movement. But Tommy saw it. He said thank you, Tommy exclaimed to his mother. Did you see? Max wagged his tail. Sarah smiled despite everything. I saw, sweetheart. Someone in the crowd had found a blanket in their car and brought it over. Tommy and Mr. Harris carefully wrapped it around Max, trying not to jostle his injured leg. Luna refused to leave Max's side, so they wrapped her in the blanket too. We need to get them to a vehicle, Mr. Harris said. The nearest emergency vet is about 10 minutes away. I have my car, Sarah said. It's in the parking lot. Several people helped create a makeshift stretcher from the blanket, and together they carefully lifted Max. The dog whimpered but didn't struggle. Luna walked, Alongside, pressed against the blanket, whining softly. As they made their way through the station, Tommy suddenly remembered something. "Mr. Buttons," he cried, "and my backpack!" Someone in the crowd handed him his teddy bear and backpack, which had been rescued from the platform. Mr. Buttons was a little dirty from being dropped, but otherwise fine. "Thank you," Tommy said, hugging the bear tightly. The procession to the parking lot was quite a sight. Tommy leading the way with Mr. Buttons, several adults carrying Max in the blanket, Luna walking alongside, Sarah keeping a firm grip on Tommy's hand, and what seemed like half the station following to see what would happen next. When they reached Sarah's car, they carefully loaded Max into the back seat. Luna immediately jumped in after him, curling up against his side. "I want to go with them," Tommy said. Sarah hesitated. They were already late for the train to Grandma Rose's house, and this vet visit could take hours. "Please, Mommy," Tommy begged. "I promised them I would help. I can't leave them now." Sarah looked at her son's earnest face, then at the two dogs in her back seat. Max's eyes were closed, but Luna was watching them, as if she too was waiting to see what would happen. "Okay," Sarah said. "Let me call Grandma Rose and explain." While Sarah made the call, Tommy climbed into the back seat, careful not to disturb Max. Luna immediately put her head in his lap, and Tommy gently stroked her matted fur. "Tommy?" It was the elderly woman who had called him a hero earlier. She was holding out a $20 bill. For the vet bills. Before Tommy could respond, others started coming forward with money. $5 here, $10 there. Someone wrote a check for $100. Mr. Harris collected it all in his hat, which was soon overflowing. "This is incredible," Sarah said, finishing her call with Grandma Rose, who had been understanding if worried. "All these people want to help." "That's $847, Mr. Harris announced after counting. "Should cover a good bit of the vet bills." Tommy's eyes were wide with wonder. "All that for Max and Luna?" "All that because of what you did," the conductor corrected. "Your bravery inspired everyone here." Sarah thanked everyone profusely, exchanged phone numbers with Mr. Harris so she could update him on the dog's condition, and then drove carefully to the emergency vet clinic. During the drive, Tommy kept talking softly to the dogs, telling them about the vet and how the doctor would make Max's leg feel better. Luna never took her eyes off him, as if she understood every word. Max's breathing had steadied, and he seemed to be resting more comfortably. "Mommy," Tommy said suddenly, "what if we can't find their owner? What if no one comes for them?" Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror at her son's worried face. "Let's take it one step at a time, sweetheart. First, let's get Max help. Then we'll worry about finding their owner." But privately, Sarah was wondering the same thing. Who would let their dogs get into this condition? Why wasn't anyone answering that phone number? And what would they do if no owner could be found? The emergency vet clinic was a modern building with large windows and a bright, clean waiting room. As soon as they walked in with Max in the blanket, the staff sprang into action. "What happened?" the receptionist asked, already calling for assistance. Sarah quickly explained while Tommy stayed with the dogs, not wanting to leave them even for a moment. Two vet technicians came out with a special wheeled stretcher and carefully transferred Max onto it. Luna tried to follow as they wheeled him back to the treatment area, but a technician gently held her back. "No!" Luna barked, the first real sound she had made. She struggled against the technician, trying to follow Max. "It's okay, Luna," Tommy said, wrapping his arms around her. "They're going to help Max. He'll be back soon." Luna whined and pressed against Tommy, shaking harder than ever. "She can come back with us," the vet said, having heard the commotion. "Sometimes it's better to keep bonded pairs together, and we need to examine her too." So Tommy, Luna, and Sarah all followed Max into the examination room. It was bright and smelled like disinfectant, but also somehow comforting, like help and healing. The vet, Dr. Martinez, was a woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. She examined Max first, carefully checking his injured leg while the technician held him steady. "This looks like it might have been caused by a car accident," she said, gently feeling along the leg. "The good news is it's not broken, but there's definitely tissue damage and infection starting to set in. He's also severely dehydrated and malnourished." "Will he be okay?" Tommy asked anxiously. Dr. Martinez smiled at him. "With proper treatment, he should make a full recovery. But he's going to need antibiotics, fluids, and probably a few days of observation." She moved on to examine Luna, who was slightly more cooperative but still kept looking over at Max. "This one's in better shape physically, Doctor," Martinez said. "Dehydrated and hungry, but no major injuries. Just some minor cuts and scrapes. They've both been through quite an ordeal." "How long do you think they've been on their own?" Sarah asked. "Based on their condition, I'd say at least 3 days, maybe 4. The collar tags are pretty worn, but that could be from before they got lost." Dr. Martinez tried the phone number on Max's tag, but again, it just rang with no answer. "We'll scan for microchips," she said. "That might give us more information." The scanning revealed that both dogs were indeed microchipped. Dr. Martinez entered the chip numbers into her computer database and waited for the results. "Okay, here we go," she said, reading from the screen. "Max is 7 years old. Luna is 3. They're registered to a Walter Mitchell. Address is, that's about 40 miles from here. Phone number is the same one on the tags." She tried calling again, but still no answer. "That's strange, Doctor," Martinez said. "Let me try something else." She typed the name and address into a search engine. After a moment, her face grew serious. "Oh my," she said softly. "What is it?" Sarah asked. Dr. Martinez turned the screen toward them. It showed a news article from 3 days ago. The headline read, "Local man critical after highway accident." Sarah read aloud. "Walter Mitchell, 73, was airlifted to Regional Medical Center after his car went off Highway 47 during Monday's storm. He remains in critical condition. The accident occurred near mile marker 15, and the cause is still under investigation." 3 days ago, Tommy said. "That's when Max got hurt." The dogs must have been in the car, Sarah realized. They must have escaped or been thrown clear during the accident, and they've been trying to find their way home ever since, Dr. Martinez added. 40 miles. They walked 40 miles injured and scared. Tommy's eyes filled with tears. They were trying to get home to their owner, but he's in the hospital. He doesn't even know they're missing. "We need to find out which hospital," Sarah said, already pulling out her phone. "Regional Medical Center," the article said. While Sarah made phone calls, Dr. Martinez and her team began treating Max and Luna. They set up an IV for Max to get fluids and antibiotics into his system. Luna refused to leave his side, so they set up a comfortable bed for her right next to Max's treatment table. Tommy watched everything with wide eyes, asking questions about each procedure. Dr. Martinez patiently explained everything, impressed by the young boy's intelligence and compassion. "You did an amazing thing today," she told Tommy. "These dogs wouldn't have survived much longer on their own, especially with Max's injury getting infected." "I just did what Grandpa Joe would have done," Tommy said simply. Sarah returned from her phone calls with news. "I found him. Walter Mitchell is at Regional Medical Center. He's been unconscious since the accident, but he's stable. I spoke to a nurse who said he's been mumbling about his dogs in his sleep. She said he has no family listed as emergency contacts. The dogs are all he has." "That's so sad," Tommy said. "He's all alone, and Max and Luna are all alone, and they don't know about each other." Sarah knelt down next to her son. "But they're not alone now, are they?" "They have us." Tommy brightened a little. "Can we go see Mr. Mitchell? Can we tell him Max and Luna are safe?" "He's unconscious, sweetheart. He won't be able to hear us." "But what if he can?" Tommy insisted. "What if he's worried about them even in his sleep? We have to try." Sarah looked at Dr. Martinez. "How long before Max is stable enough to leave?" "I'd like to keep him overnight at least," the vet said. "Maybe 2 nights to be safe. Luna can stay with him. But Mr. Mitchell needs to know they're okay," Tommy said. What if we took a picture or a video? The nurse could show it to him." Dr. Martinez smiled. "That's a wonderful idea. Here, let me help." She helped Tommy position himself next to Max and Luna for a photo. Luna, seeming to understand this was important, sat up straight and even managed a slight tail wag. Max opened his eyes and looked directly at the camera. "Hi, Mr. Mitchell," Tommy said to the camera as Sarah recorded a video. "My name is Tommy. I found Max and Luna at the train station. They're safe now. Max hurt his leg, but the doctor says he's going to be all better. Luna is taking really good care of him. They miss you, but they're okay. Please get better soon so you can see them again." Luna barked once, as if adding her own message, and Max's tail thumped weakly against the table. "Perfect," Sarah said, stopping the recording. "I'll send this to the nurse at the hospital." While they waited for Max's initial treatment to finish, Tommy sat with Luna, telling her stories about his Grandpa Joe and all the animals he had helped. Luna listened with her head in Tommy's lap, occasionally licking his hand. "You know," Dr. Martinez said, watching them, "I've been a vet for 15 years, and I've rarely seen a bond form this quickly between a child and a dog. Luna really trusts you, Tommy." "It's because he saved us," Sarah said softly. "Animals know when someone risks everything for them." About an hour later, Sarah's phone rang. It was the nurse from Regional Medical Center. "You're not going to believe this," the nurse said, her voice excited. "I played the video for Mr. Mitchell. We always talk to unconscious patients, sometimes it helps, and his vital signs improved immediately. His heart rate stabilized, his breathing got stronger. The doctor says it's the best response we've seen from him since he arrived." "Really?" Sarah asked, putting the phone on speaker so Tommy could hear. "Really? And there's more. About 10 minutes after I played the video, he opened his eyes. He can't speak yet because of the breathing tube, but he's conscious. He wrote one word on the paper I gave him. Dogs?" Tommy jumped up and down with excitement. "He's awake! Mr. Mitchell is awake. The doctor thinks knowing his dogs are safe gave him the will to fight," the nurse continued. "Would it be possible? I know this is a lot to ask, but would it be possible to bring the dogs here, even just to the parking lot? I could wheel Mr. Mitchell to a window. The doctor thinks seeing them might help his recovery even more." Sarah looked at Dr. Martinez, who overheard the conversation. "Max needs to stay on IV fluids for at least a few more hours," the vet said. "But after that, if we're very careful, a short visit might be possible. It would have to be tomorrow, though." "Tomorrow would be perfect," the nurse said. "Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means. Mr. Mitchell has been so alone. The dogs are his only family." After they hung up, Tommy was practically vibrating with excitement. "We're going to reunite them. Max and Luna and Mr. Mitchell are going to be together again." "Yes, we are," Sarah said, hugging her son. "I'm proud of you, Tommy. Despite scaring me half to death this morning, I'm so proud of you." They stayed at the vet clinic for another 2 hours while Max received treatment. Luna never left his side, and Tommy never left Luna's side. Finally, Dr. Martinez said they were stable enough to rest. "Come back tomorrow morning," she said. "If Max has a good night, we can attempt the hospital visit tomorrow afternoon." Tommy didn't want to leave, but Sarah promised they would be back first thing in the morning. He gave both dogs gentle hugs goodbye, whispering promises to return soon. As they drove home, Tommy was quiet for a while. Then he said, "Mommy, do you think Grandpa Joe would be proud of me?" Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, Grandpa Joe would be so incredibly proud of you. You did exactly what he would have done." "I was really scared when the train was coming," Tommy admitted. "But you didn't let the fear stop you," Sarah pointed out. "That's what real courage is." That evening, the story of Tommy's rescue had already begun to spread. Someone at the station had posted a video online, and it was being shared rapidly. Sarah's phone kept buzzing with calls from local news stations wanting to interview Tommy. "Maybe tomorrow," Sarah told them all. "Right now, my son needs rest." But Tommy couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Max and Luna, alone at the vet clinic, and Mr. Mitchell, alone at the hospital. He made Sarah call the vet clinic 3 times to check on the dogs, and each time the report was good. Max was responding well to treatment, and Luna hadn't left his side. Finally, around 9 o'clock, Tommy fell asleep on the couch, still clutching Mr. Buttons and mumbling about dogs and trains in his sleep. Sarah carefully carried him to his bed, tucking him in and kissing his forehead. She stood in his doorway for a long moment, watching him sleep, thinking about how close she had come to losing him that morning, but also thinking about how proud she was of the brave, compassionate little boy he was becoming. The next morning, Tommy was up before dawn, already dressed and ready to go back to the vet clinic. Sarah had barely slept, replaying the events of the previous day over and over in her mind. She made Tommy eat breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, though he was so excited he could barely sit still. "Do you think Max's leg is better?" he asked between bites. "Do you think Luna slept okay? Do you think Mr. Mitchell is still awake?" "We'll find out soon," Sarah promised. They arrived at the vet clinic just as it was opening. Dr. Martinez was already there, having come in early to check on her special patients. "Good news," she said as soon as she saw them. "Max had a great night. The antibiotics are working. The swelling in his leg has gone down significantly, and he even ate some food this morning." She led them back to where Max and Luna were. Max was looking much better, his eyes brighter and more alert. When he saw Tommy, his tail wagged with real enthusiasm. Luna barked happily and tried to jump up, though the vet tech gently kept her calm. "Hi, Max." "Hi, Luna," Tommy said, his whole face lighting up. "You look so much better." He spent the next hour with the dogs, while Dr. Martinez prepared Max for the trip to the hospital. She equipped him with a special supportive wrap for his leg and made sure his IV port was secure in case he needed more fluids. "This is highly unusual," she admitted to Sarah, "but I've seen the healing power of reunions before. Sometimes the best medicine is love." They carefully loaded Max into Sarah's car, using a special ramp Dr. Martinez provided. Luna jumped in beside him, and Tommy sat between them, one hand on each dog. Dr. Martinez followed in her own vehicle with medical supplies, just in case. The drive to Regional Medical Center took about 30 minutes. Tommy talked to the dogs the whole way, telling them about Mr. Mitchell and how happy he would be to see them. When they arrived at the hospital, the nurse they had spoken to, Nancy, according to her name tag, was waiting for them in the parking lot with a wheelchair. "Mr. Mitchell has been asking about his dogs all morning," she said. "He's written their names about 50 times on his paper pad. This is going to mean everything to him." They carefully got Max out of the car. He was able to walk slowly with the leg wrap, though he limped heavily. Luna stayed pressed against his side, supporting him. "We can't bring them inside, hospital rules," Nancy explained. "But Mr. Mitchell's room is on the first floor. I can bring him to the window." She pointed to a large window about 50 feet away. "If you wait right there, I'll go get him." Tommy, Sarah, the dogs, and Dr. Martinez positioned themselves where Nancy had indicated. A few minutes later, they saw movement inside. Nancy was wheeling someone toward the window. The man in the wheelchair was thin and pale, with white hair and a face marked by worry and pain. He had oxygen tubes in his nose and an IV in his arm. But when he saw the dogs through the window, his whole face transformed. Walter Mitchell's hands pressed against the window glass, and tears streamed down his weathered face. His mouth formed the words Max and Luna over and over, though no sound came through the glass. The dogs had seen him too. Luna started barking excitedly, jumping up despite the vet tech's attempts to keep her calm. Max, despite his injured leg, pulled forward, trying to get closer to the window, his tail wagging so hard his whole back end was moving. Tommy watched the reunion, with tears in his own eyes. He had never seen such pure joy and relief on anyone's face as he saw on Mr. Mitchell's face right then. The old man was sobbing openly, not caring who saw, his hands still pressed against the glass, as if he could somehow reach through it to touch his beloved dogs. Nancy, the nurse, was wiping her own eyes as she leaned down to say something to Mr. Mitchell. He nodded eagerly and pointed to something. Nancy smiled and opened the window just a crack, not enough for any real contact, but enough for sound to pass through. "Max, Luna, my babies." Mr. Mitchell's voice was hoarse and weak, but full of love. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." At the sound of their owner's voice, both dogs went wild with joy. Luna was spinning in circles, barking and crying at the same time. Max, despite his injury, was trying to stand on his hind legs, his front paws reaching toward the window. "It's okay, Mr. Mitchell," Tommy called out, moving closer to the window. "They're okay." "They missed you so much, but they're okay." Walter Mitchell's eyes found Tommy for the first time. "You're the boy," he said, his voice breaking. "The boy from the video. You saved them." Tommy felt suddenly shy under the old man's intense gaze. "They needed help," he said simply. Max was hurt, and Luna was scared, and the train was coming. "The train?" Mr. Mitchell looked confused. Nancy said something about a train, but I didn't understand. Sarah stepped forward. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Sarah Walker, Tommy's mother. Your dogs somehow made it 40 miles from your accident site to our local train station. They were on the platform when an express train was coming through. Tommy risked his life to pull them to safety." Mr. Mitchell's face went even paler, if that was possible. 40 miles? They walked 40 miles trying to get home. He looked at Max's wrapped leg, at Luna's thin frame. Oh, my poor babies, what have I done to you? It wasn't your fault, Tommy said firmly. You had an accident. It wasn't anybody's fault. Mr. Mitchell was crying harder now, his frail shoulders shaking. They're all I have, he whispered. After my Margaret died 2 years ago, they're all I have left. I've been so worried. Even when I was unconscious, I could feel something was wrong. I kept dreaming about them, lost and scared. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. Mr. Mitchell, I'm Dr. Martinez from the Emergency Veterinary Clinic. I want you to know that Max is going to make a full recovery. His leg was injured, probably in the accident, and it got infected. But we've got him on antibiotics, and he's responding very well. Luna has some minor cuts and scrapes, and both dogs were dehydrated and malnourished, but they're going to be fine. Can I... Mr. Mitchell started, then stopped, seeming to gather his courage. I know I can't touch them through the window, but could you bring them closer? Please! Tommy and Dr. Martinez carefully brought both dogs right up to the window. Max pressed his nose against the glass, leaving fog marks with his breath. Luna put her paws up on the wall below the window, stretching as tall as she could. Mr. Mitchell placed his hand on the glass where Max's nose was pressed. I'm so sorry, boy. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. Max whined and licked the glass, his tail never stopping its wagging. Mr. Mitchell, Nancy said gently, the doctor says you need to rest, but I promise we can do this again tomorrow if you keep improving. When can I go home? Mr. Mitchell asked desperately. When can I have my dogs back? Nancy hesitated. You've got at least another week here, maybe 2. You had serious injuries, Mr. Mitchell. You're lucky to be alive. The old man's face crumpled. 2 weeks? But who will take care of them? I don't have anyone. I don't have any family left. Tommy looked up at his mother, his eyes pleading. Sarah already knew what he was going to ask, and she had already made up her mind. We'll take care of them, she said. Tommy and I will take care of Max and Luna until you're well enough to go home. Mr. Mitchell stared at her in disbelief. You would do that? But you don't even know me. I'm a complete stranger. You're not a stranger, Tommy said. You're Max and Luna's dad, and Max and Luna are our friends now. We'll bring them to visit you every day, Sarah added. Tommy's on school break for another week, and after that, we'll come after school, every single day until you can take them home. Mr. Mitchell was sobbing again, but this time it seemed like tears of relief and gratitude. I don't know how to thank you. I don't have much money. The vet bills alone must be... Don't worry about that, Sarah said quickly. The community has already raised money to help with the vet bills. Everyone at the train station yesterday was so moved by what happened. People want to help. I don't understand, Mr. Mitchell said. Why would strangers want to help me? Tommy walked even closer to the window. Because that's what people do when someone needs help. My Grandpa Joe taught me that. He said the world is full of good people who want to help. Sometimes they just need to know how. Mr. Mitchell studied Tommy's face through the glass. Your grandfather sounds like he was a wise man. He was, Tommy said softly. He died last spring. But he taught me lots of things first. Like how to be gentle with scared animals, and how to be brave even when you're scared. He taught you well, Mr. Mitchell said, his voice full of emotion. You're a special boy, Tommy. Nancy gently reminded them that Mr. Mitchell needed to return to his room for medication and rest. The old man pressed his hand against the glass one more time, and both dogs pressed against it from their side. I love you both so much, he whispered. Be good for Tommy and his mom. I'll get better as fast as I can, I promise. As Nancy wheeled him away, Mr. Mitchell kept looking back until he disappeared around a corner. Max and Luna whined and pawed at the window, not understanding why their owner was leaving again. It's okay, Tommy soothed them. We'll see him again. Tomorrow. Every day, remember? We promised. Dr. Martinez helped them get the dogs back in the car. That was beautiful, she said. I've been doing this job a long time, and reunions like that never get old. You're doing a wonderful thing, taking care of them. Do you have supplies we'll need? Sarah asked. Food, medications, anything? I'll send you home with everything, Dr. Martinez promised. And here's my cell phone number. Call me day or night if you have any concerns. On the drive home, Tommy sat in the back seat between Max and Luna again. Both dogs were calmer now, exhausted from the emotion of seeing their owner. Luna had her head in Tommy's lap, and Max was leaning against his side. "Mommy," Tommy said thoughtfully. "Mister, Mitchell said he doesn't have any family. That's really sad." "It is sad," Sarah agreed. "Some people end up alone as they get older. That's why his dogs are so important to him. But now he has us," Tommy said decisively. "We're his friends now. So he's not alone anymore." Sarah smiled at her son's simple wisdom. "You're right, sweetheart. He's not alone anymore." When they got home, they faced the practical challenge of settling 2 large dogs into their small house. Sarah hadn't had pets since she was a child, and she suddenly realized how much work this was going to be. "First things first," she said, looking at the 2 dirty, matted dogs. "Bath time." Tommy's eyes went wide. "Both of them? But Max has a hurt leg." "We'll be very careful," Sarah promised. "Dr. Martinez said we could remove the wrap for bathing as long as we dry the leg thoroughly and re-wrap it after." What followed was perhaps the most chaotic hour of Sarah's recent memory. Luna, it turned out, loved water and kept trying to play in the bathtub, splashing water everywhere. Max, on the other hand, sat stoically still but looked utterly miserable, like he was enduring the worst torture imaginable. Tommy was soaked from head to toe within minutes, but he was laughing as Luna kept trying to catch the water from the faucet. Sarah found herself laughing too, despite the mess. The bathroom looked like a tsunami had hit it, but both dogs were finally clean. "They look so different," Tommy exclaimed as they dried the dogs with old towels. Indeed, clean and dry, Max and Luna's coats were beautiful, rich brown and black, glossy and thick. Luna's eyes seemed brighter, and even Max looked more alert. "Now, we need to figure out sleeping arrangements," Sarah said, looking around their small living room. They had set up temporary beds using old blankets and pillows, but it was clear the dogs had their own ideas. Luna followed Tommy everywhere he went, like a furry shadow. When he sat on the couch to watch TV, she immediately jumped up beside him, despite Sarah's half-hearted protest about dogs on furniture. Max, moving more slowly, managed to climb up on Tommy's other side. "I guess the couch is theirs now," Sarah said with a resigned smile. "Can they sleep in my room tonight?" Tommy asked hopefully. Sarah hesitated. Tommy's room was small, barely big enough for his twin bed and dresser. But the look on his face was so hopeful, and the dogs were already so attached to him. "We'll try it," she said, "but if they keep you awake or there's any problem, they move to the living room. Deal?" "Deal," Tommy said happily. That evening, as Sarah cooked dinner, spaghetti with meatballs, Tommy's favorite, she kept glancing into the living room, where Tommy was sitting on the floor with both dogs. He was reading to them from one of his picture books, showing them the pictures and everything. Luna appeared to be paying attention, her head tilted as she listened. Max was dozing, but his tail would thump occasionally, as if he was listening too. And then the little train said, I think I can, Tommy read. "Just like you guys. You thought you could find your way home, and you almost did. You were so brave." Sarah felt her eyes tear up. Her little boy had such a big heart. Joe would have been so proud of him. She thought about her late father-in-law, how he had always been bringing home stray cats or injured birds. Tommy had inherited that same compassionate spirit. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Nancy from the hospital. "I wanted to call and thank you again," Nancy said. "Mr. Mitchell's improvement since seeing his dogs has been remarkable. His doctor is amazed. He's eating better, his vitals are stronger, and he's cooperating with physical therapy. He kept saying he needs to get strong so he can take care of Max and Luna again." "That's wonderful news," Sarah said. "We promise to visit every day." "What time is best?" "Afternoons are good, around 2 o'clock. That's after his therapy, but before evening medications." "We'll be there," Sarah promised. After dinner, during which both dogs sat politely nearby, drooling but not begging, they were well trained, Sarah noted with relief. Tommy helped her wash the dishes. Then it was time for homework. Even though he was on break, Sarah had him practice his reading and writing every day. "Can I write about Max and Luna?" Tommy asked. "Of course," Sarah said. Tommy worked diligently at the kitchen table, his pencil moving carefully across the paper. Luna lay at his feet, and Max was stretched out nearby. Sarah peeked over his shoulder and read, "Today, I saved 2 dogs. Their names are Max and Luna. Max is old and wise. Luna is young and playful. They love each other very much. They walked 40 miles to find their home because their owner was in an accident. They are the bravest dogs I ever met. Now they are my friends. Tomorrow we will visit their dad again. I think my Grandpa Joe would be happy. Sarah had to turn away to wipe her eyes. The spelling wasn't perfect, and the grammar needed work, but the heart in those simple sentences was overwhelming. That night, getting ready for bed was an adventure. Max needed his medication, which he took surprisingly well hidden in a piece of cheese. Luna needed to go outside one more time, and then spent 10 minutes sniffing every corner of the backyard. Finally, everyone was settled in Tommy's room. The 2 dogs barely fit on the floor beside his bed, but they curled up together on the blanket Sarah had laid out. Tommy hung his hand over the edge of the bed so he could touch Luna's fur. "Good night, Max." "Good night, Luna," he whispered. "Don't worry. Tomorrow we'll see your dad again." Sarah stood in the doorway, watching her son fall asleep surrounded by his new guardians. She thought about calling Grandma Rose to explain why they had missed their visit, but decided it could wait until morning. Right now, this moment felt too precious to interrupt. Around midnight, Sarah woke to check on everyone. She found Tommy's bed empty and panicked for a moment before she saw him. He was on the floor, curled up between Max and Luna, all 3 of them fast asleep. Luna had her paw over Tommy's arm, and Max's head was resting against Tommy's back. Sarah grabbed her phone and took a picture, knowing this was a moment she would want to remember forever. Then she grabbed a spare blanket and gently covered all 3 of them. Tommy stirred slightly but didn't wake. The next morning came early with Luna licking Tommy's face at 6 a.m. "Luna!" Tommy giggled, trying to push her away. "That tickles!" Max was more dignified, waiting patiently for Tommy to wake up fully before requesting attention with a gentle paw on the boy's arm. Sarah made breakfast, pancakes this time, because it felt like a special occasion deserved pancakes. She even made a few plain ones for the dogs, who ate them like they were the finest delicacy. "Can we go see Mr. Mitchell now?" Tommy asked, syrup on his chin. "Not until this afternoon, remember?" The nurse said 2 o'clock is best. Tommy's face fell slightly but then brightened. "Can we take Max and Luna to the park? They need exercise, right?" Sarah considered this. Max probably shouldn't walk far with his injured leg, but gentle movement might be good for him. "A short walk," she agreed, "but we need to be very careful with Max's leg." They drove to the local park, which had a nice flat walking path, perfect for an injured dog. Luna was excited, sniffing everything and wanting to explore. Max moved slowly but seemed happy to be outside. Other dog walkers stopped to admire them and ask about the wrapped leg. "He's a hero dog," Tommy would tell anyone who asked. "He walked 40 miles with a hurt leg to try to get home." One elderly woman was particularly touched by the story. "I read about you in the online news," she said to Tommy. "You're the boy who saved them from the train." Tommy blushed. "They needed help. Not everyone would have helped," the woman said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a $20 bill. "For their care," she said, pressing it into Sarah's hand despite her protests. This happened 2 more times during their short walk, people recognizing them from the news story and wanting to contribute. By the time they got back to the car, they had $60 in donations. "People are so nice," Tommy said wonderingly. "They're inspired by what you did," Sarah explained. "Sometimes one act of kindness creates a ripple effect, making other people want to be kind too." They went home for lunch and to let Max rest. The big dog was tired from the walk, his leg obviously bothering him despite the pain medication. Tommy sat with him, gently stroking his head and telling him he was brave and strong. Finally, it was time to go to the hospital. Both dogs seemed to understand where they were going, getting excited as they got closer to the medical center. Luna was practically vibrating with anticipation, and even Max was more alert. Nancy met them in the parking lot again. "Mr. Mitchell has been watching the clock all morning," she said with a smile. "He's doing so much better." The doctor is amazed. They took their position by the window, and soon Mr. Mitchell appeared, being wheeled by Nancy. He looked better than yesterday, more color in his face, sitting up straighter. When he saw the dogs, his face lit up with joy. "Max! Luna! My beautiful babies!" he called through the crack in the window. The dog's reaction was just as enthusiastic as yesterday. Luna barked and spun in circles, and Max wagged his tail so hard his whole body wiggled. "Look, Mr. Mitchell," Tommy said excitedly. "We gave them baths." And Max took all his medicine, and Luna ate all her breakfast, and we went for a walk in the park. Mr. Mitchell was crying again, but they were clearly happy tears. "Thank you, Tommy. Thank you for taking such good care of them. Tommy slept on the floor with them last night," Sarah added with a smile. "I found all three of them curled up together. They were lonely," Tommy explained. "They missed you? So I wanted them to know they weren't alone." Mr. Mitchell pressed his hand against the glass. "You're an angel, Tommy. A real angel." They stayed for 30 minutes, with Tommy telling Mr. Mitchell every detail about the dog's activities. Mr. Mitchell listened to everything, asking questions and smiling at Tommy's enthusiasm. "Mr. Mitchell," Tommy said suddenly, "where were you going when you had your accident?" The old man's face grew sad. I was going to visit my brother. We hadn't talked in 15 years, had a stupid fight about something I can't even remember now. I decided life was too short to hold grudges, so I was driving to his house to make peace, but I never made it. "What's your brother's name?" Sarah asked gently. "Joseph," Mr. Mitchell said. "Joseph Mitchell. He lives in Millbrook, actually, not far from where you found the dogs." Sarah and Tommy exchanged shocked looks. "Joseph?" Tommy said, his voice small. "My grandpa was named Joseph. Joseph Walker." Mr. Mitchell looked confused. "Walker? But that's..." His eyes went wide. "Sarah Walker? You're Joe's daughter-in-law? Tommy is Joe's grandson?" Sarah nodded, speechless. "But Joe died," Mr. Mitchell said, his voice breaking. "I read about it in the newspaper. Heart attack, last spring. I wanted to go to the funeral, but I was too proud, too ashamed. I thought I had more time to make things right." Tommy was staring at Mr. Mitchell with wide eyes. "You're Grandpa Joe's brother? You're my great-uncle?" Mr. Mitchell nodded, tears streaming down his face. "We were best friends growing up. Inseparable. But then we both fell in love with the same woman, Margaret. She chose me, and Joe never forgave me. We said terrible things to each other, things brothers should never say. Grandpa Joe talked about a brother sometimes," Tommy said slowly. "When he was teaching me about animals, he would say, 'My brother and I used to do this,' or 'My brother showed me that,' but he always looked sad when he said it." "We both loved animals," Mr. Mitchell said. "That's one thing we always had in common. We used to rescue strays together when we were boys. Our mother called us the Mitchell Boys Animal Hospital." Sarah finally found her voice. "Joe never told me your name. He just said he had a brother he'd lost touch with. I had no idea you were so close by." "Millbrook is only 20 miles from where I live," Mr. Mitchell said. 20 miles and 15 years. What a waste." Tommy walked closer to the window. "But you were coming to make up with him. That's what matters. You were trying to fix things." "Too late," Mr. Mitchell said bitterly. "I was too late." "No," Tommy said firmly. "It's not too late. Grandpa Joe would be happy that I'm helping you. He would want me to take care of Max and Luna. He would want us to be family." Mr. Mitchell looked at this remarkable little boy, his great-nephew, he realized with wonder, and felt something shift in his chest, a warmth he hadn't felt since Margaret died. "Family," he repeated softly. "I haven't had family in so long." "Well, you do now," Sarah said, wiping her own tears. "Joe would never forgive me if I didn't take care of his brother." "And Max and Luna are family too," Tommy added. "So we're a big family now?" Luna barked as if in agreement, and even Max managed a soft woof. Nancy, who had been standing quietly by, was openly crying. "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed," she said. "Mr. Mitchell, your brother's grandson, saved your dogs, and now you found each other. It's like Joe arranged this from heaven." Mr. Mitchell laughed through his tears. "That would be just like Joe. He always did have a flair for the dramatic." They talked for another 20 minutes, sharing stories about Joe. Mr. Mitchell told Tommy about adventures they had as boys, catching frogs in the creek, building a treehouse, rescuing a whole litter of abandoned kittens and hiding them in their bedroom until their mother found out. "She was so mad," Mr. Mitchell laughed. "But she let us keep one. We named him Boots because he had white paws." "Grandpa Joe had a cat named Boots when I was little," Tommy exclaimed. A really old cat with white paws. The third or fourth Boots, probably, Mr. Mitchell said with a smile. Joe always named his cats Boots, in memory of our first one. Finally, Nancy had to insist that Mr. Mitchell return to his room for rest. But this time, the parting didn't seem as sad. "We'll be back tomorrow, Uncle Walter," Tommy said, trying out the title. Mr. Mitchell's face crumpled with fresh tears. "Uncle Walter? I never thought I'd hear anyone call me that. Is that okay?" Tommy asked anxiously. "Can I call you Uncle Walter?" "It's more than okay," Mr. Mitchell said. "It's perfect." As they drove home, Tommy was full of questions. Why didn't Grandpa Joe ever take us to meet Uncle Walter? Why did they fight for so long? Do you think Grandpa Joe would really be happy that we found him? Sarah answered as best she could. Sometimes adults make mistakes and let pride get in the way. They wait too long to say sorry. But yes, I think Grandpa Joe would be very happy. He loved his brother, even if he couldn't say it. That evening, Sarah called Grandma Rose to explain everything. Rose was Joe's mother, and she cried when she heard about Walter. "I always hoped my boys would reconcile," she said. "I'm too old to travel now, but will you tell Walter that I love him? Tell him his mother never stopped loving him." "Grandma Rose," Tommy said, taking the phone, "Uncle Walter has 2 dogs, Max and Luna. They're really nice. When Uncle Walter gets better, can he bring them when he visits you?" "Of course, sweetheart," Rose said. "I would love to meet Walter's dogs. And I would love to see Walter again. It's been far too long." That night, as they settled in for bed, once again Tommy ended up on the floor with the dogs. Tommy said, "Mommy, this has been the best adventure ever. Better than going to see the ducks with Grandma Rose." Sarah kissed his forehead. "It has been quite an adventure. And it's not over yet. Uncle Walter still needs to get better and come home." "He will," Tommy said confidently. "He has us now. And Max and Luna. He has reasons to get better." Over the next week, they fell into a routine. Mornings were for walks in the park, where Max grew stronger every day. His limp was less pronounced, and he could walk farther without getting tired. Luna had gained weight, and her coat was becoming glossy and beautiful. Afternoons were for visiting Uncle Walter. Each day he looked better, stronger. The physical therapist said he was their star patient, working harder than people half his age. "I have to get strong," Walter would say. "I have a family to come home to." The hospital visits became the highlight of everyone's day. Tommy would tell Walter everything the dogs had done, from Luna's attempt to catch a squirrel, unsuccessful but hilarious, to Max's dignified acceptance of his daily medication. Walter shared more stories about Joe, filling in gaps in Tommy's knowledge about his grandfather. "Joe was the brave one," Walter said one day. "I was always more cautious, but Joe would charge right in if an animal needed help, just like you, Tommy." "But you were driving to make up with him," Tommy pointed out. "That was brave too." Walter smiled sadly. "Too little, too late." "No," Tommy said firmly, a phrase he found himself repeating often. "It's never too late for family." One day, about a week after they had found each other, Walter had news. "The doctor says I can go home in 3 days, he announced, his face glowing with happiness. 3 more days, and I can hug my dogs properly." Tommy cheered, and even through the window, they could hear Luna barking excitedly as if she understood. "But," Walter continued, his face growing worried, "my house isn't ready. I live alone, and with my injuries, I'll need help for a while. The social worker is talking about a rehabilitation facility, but they don't allow pets." "No," Tommy said immediately. "You can't go somewhere without Max and Luna. They need you." Sarah had been thinking about this possibility. Their house was small, but they had a spare room that they used for storage. It would take some work to clear it out, but... "Uncle Walter," she said, "how would you feel about staying with us for a while? Just until you're fully recovered. We have a spare room, and the dogs are already comfortable at our house." Walter stared at her in shock. "You would do that? But I'm practically a stranger, and the work involved, the expense..." "You're not a stranger," Tommy interrupted. "You're family. And families take care of each other." "Joe always said that," Walter said softly. "Families take care of each other, even when it's hard, even when they've been apart." "Then it's settled," Sarah said firmly. "I'll talk to the social worker about getting you released to our care." Walter was crying again, something that happened a lot these days, but these were tears of gratitude and joy. "I don't know how to thank you. "You don't have to thank us," Tommy said. "That's what family does." The next 3 days were a whirlwind of preparation. Sarah and Tommy cleared out the spare room, setting up a bed they borrowed from a neighbor and making the space comfortable. They installed grab bars in the bathroom and got a shower chair from a medical supply store. Tommy made a big "Welcome Home, Uncle Walter" sign with markers and construction paper. He decorated it with drawings of Max and Luna and hung it in the spare room. The dogs seemed to sense something important was happening. They were more attentive than usual, following Tommy everywhere and watching Sarah's preparations with interest. Finally, the day arrived. Sarah had to sign multiple forms at the hospital, accepting responsibility for Walter's care. The social worker gave her a long list of instructions, medications, and follow-up appointments. "This is a big responsibility," the social worker warned. "Mr. Mitchell will need help with daily activities for at least a few weeks." "We understand," Sarah said. "We're ready." Tommy was waiting in the car with Max and Luna. The dogs were practically vibrating with excitement. Somehow, they knew today was special. When the hospital doors opened and Walter appeared in a wheelchair, pushed by Nancy, both dogs went wild. Luna howled with joy, a sound Tommy had never heard her make before. Max barked, his deep voice echoing in the parking lot. Nancy wheeled Walter right up to the car. "Okay, Mr. Mitchell, moment of truth." Walter reached out with shaking hands, and for the first time in 2 weeks, touched his dogs. Luna immediately tried to climb into his lap, licking his face frantically. Max, more careful because of his own injury, pressed his head against Walter's chest, his tail wagging so hard it was hitting the wheelchair. "My babies," Walter sobbed, burying his face in Max's fur. "My beautiful, brave babies. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "They forgive you," Tommy said softly. "Look how happy they are." Indeed, both dogs were beside themselves with joy. Luna was making little yipping sounds, and Max was doing a dignified version of a happy dance, injured leg and all. Getting Walter into the car was a careful process. He was still weak and sore from his injuries, but finally he was settled in the front seat, with both dogs trying to squeeze into his lap from the back seat. "Careful, careful," Sarah laughed. "We don't want anyone getting hurt." The drive home was filled with happy chaos. Walter kept reaching back to pet the dogs, and they kept trying to lick his hand. Tommy was talking nonstop about all the things they were going to do together. "And I can show you my books, and we can watch movies, and Mom makes really good spaghetti. And there's a park nearby where we can walk Max and Luna when you're stronger and—" "Breathe, Tommy," Sarah said with a laugh. When they pulled into the driveway, Tommy ran ahead to open the door. The "Welcome Home" sign he'd made was visible through the window. Getting Walter inside and settled took time. He was exhausted from the journey, more tired than he'd expected to be. But he was home, or at least in a home with family, which was more than he'd had in years. Sarah had prepared the couch with pillows and blankets, and Walter sank into it gratefully. Immediately, both dogs joined him, Luna curling up on one side and Max on the other, careful not to jostle anyone's injuries. "They missed you so much," Tommy said, sitting on the floor by Walter's feet. "Every night, Luna would whine a little before going to sleep. I think she was calling for you." Walter's eyes filled with tears again. "I heard them, you know. When I was unconscious, I heard them calling for me. That's what made me fight to wake up." Sarah brought Walter a cup of tea and his afternoon medications. "The social worker said you need to rest as much as possible for the first few days." "Rest?" Walter looked around at his new surroundings, at his dog safe beside him, at his great-nephew's eager face, at his nephew's widow's kind smile. "How can I rest when I'm so happy I could burst?" That evening, they had a celebration dinner. Sarah made her famous spaghetti with meatballs, and even made a small portion without sauce for the dogs. Walter was still weak and could only eat a little, but he declared it the best meal he'd had in years. "Margaret used to make spaghetti," he said softly. "Every Sunday. Joe would come over with his family. This was before the fight, and we'd all eat together." "What was she like?" Tommy asked. "Your wife?" Walter's face softened. "She was wonderful. Kind, funny, loved animals as much as Joe and I did. She always said the fight between Joe and me was the stupidest thing she'd ever seen. Said we were both too proud for our own good." "She was right," Sarah said gently. "Yes, she was," Walter agreed. I wish she could see this. She would be so happy that we're together again, even if Joe isn't here to see it. Maybe they're both watching, Tommy suggested. Grandpa Joe and your Margaret. Maybe they're happy we're all together. Walter reached down and ruffled Tommy's hair with a shaky hand. Maybe they are, son. Maybe they are. That night, sleeping arrangements were interesting. Max and Luna wanted to be with Walter, but his bed was too high for Max to jump onto with his injured leg. Tommy solved the problem by dragging his blankets and pillow into Walter's room. I'll sleep on the floor with Max, he announced. That way we can all be together. Tommy, you don't have to... Walter started. I want to, Tommy said firmly. You're family, and family sticks together. So that's how Sarah found them when she checked before going to bed herself. Walter asleep in the bed with Luna curled beside him, and Tommy on the floor with Max, one small hand resting on the dog's back. She took another picture, thinking how much their lives had changed in just 2 weeks. What had started as a simple trip to the train station had become something so much more. They had found family they didn't know they had. They had saved 2 dogs who had saved them right back by bringing them all together. The next morning brought new challenges. Walter was stiffer and more sore than he had been in the hospital, where nurses had been helping him move regularly. Sarah helped him to the bathroom and then to the kitchen for breakfast, but it was clear he was struggling. I'm sorry to be such a burden, he said, embarrassed by his weakness. You're not a burden, Sarah said firmly. You're family. And you're going to get stronger every day. You'll see. Tommy had appointed himself Walter's chief entertainer and assistant. He brought Walter books, the TV remote, his medications, glasses of water, anything he could think of that might help. Tommy, let Uncle Walter rest, Sarah said when Tommy brought his 5th glass of water in an hour. It's fine, Walter said with a smile. I haven't had anyone fuss over me in years. It's nice. Max and Luna had appointed themselves Walter's guardians. They rarely left his side, following him whenever he moved, watching him with concerned eyes. When the physical therapist came for Walter's first home visit, Luna growled at her until Walter assured her it was okay. Protective dogs you have here, the therapist Maria said with a smile. That's a good sign. Shows the bond is strong. She put Walter through a series of exercises, all designed to rebuild his strength and mobility. Tommy watched everything carefully, memorizing the exercises. I can help Uncle Walter practice, he announced. I have a good memory. Maria was impressed. That would be very helpful, young man. Mr. Mitchell needs to do these exercises 3 times a day. So, Tommy became Walter's exercise coach, counting repetitions and offering encouragement. You can do it, Uncle Walter, just like the little engine. I think I can. I think I can. Walter laughed, even though the exercises hurt. You're a tough coach, Tommy. Grandpa Joe always said, practice makes perfect. Tommy replied seriously. As the days passed, a routine developed. Mornings were for exercises and dog walks. Walter could only make it to the front yard at first, but he insisted on being there while the dogs explored. Afternoons were for rest and stories. Walter had dozens of tales about Joe from their childhood, and Tommy never tired of hearing them. One time, Walter said, Joe and I found an injured hawk. Must have been hit by a car. Joe insisted we could nurse it back to health. We kept it in the garage for 3 weeks, feeding it raw hamburger we snuck from Mom's refrigerator. Did it get better? Tommy asked eagerly. It did. Joe named it Frederick for some reason. When it was healed, we took it to a field to release it. It flew away but then circled back 3 times, like it was saying goodbye. Joe cried, though he denied it later. Grandpa Joe cried? Tommy was amazed. He'd never seen his grandfather cry. Oh yes, Joe felt everything deeply, especially when it came to animals. That's why the fight hurt so much. We both said things about each other's character that we knew would wound. I accused him of being too soft-hearted. He accused me of being cold. We were both wrong. As the weeks turned into a month, Walter's strength gradually returned. Each day brought small victories, walking to the mailbox without help, making it up the stairs on his own, playing a gentle game of fetch with Luna in the backyard while Max supervised. The house that had once felt too small for just Sarah and Tommy now felt perfectly sized, filled with warmth and laughter and the constant clicking of dog nails on hardwood floors. Tommy had returned to school, but every afternoon he would burst through the door, eager to share his day with Uncle Walter. The old man would be waiting in his chair, He'd graduated from the couch to a proper recliner Sarah had found at a second-hand store, with Max and Luna flanking him like furry sentinels. "Uncle Walter, guess what?" Tommy would exclaim, dropping his backpack and immediately going to hug the dogs and then his uncle. "We learned about heroes in school today, and I wrote about you and Max and Luna." Walter would chuckle, his eyes crinkling with joy. "We're not heroes, Tommy. We're just a family that found each other when we needed it most." But Tommy's teacher, Mrs. Peterson, disagreed. She called Sarah one evening, her voice filled with emotion. "Mrs. Walker, I wanted you to know that Tommy's story about rescuing the dogs and finding his great uncle has inspired our entire class. The children want to do something to help. Would it be okay if we organized a fundraiser for the local animal shelter in honor of Max and Luna?" Sarah was touched. "That would be wonderful. I'm sure Walter would be honored." When she told Walter about it, his eyes filled with the tears that came so easily these days. But they were always tears of joy now, not sorrow. "Joe would have loved that," he said softly. "He always said, 'One good deed creates ripples, like a stone thrown in a pond.'" The fundraiser became a school-wide event. Tommy's story had spread throughout the school, and everyone wanted to be part of it. Children brought in their allowance money, parents donated supplies, and local businesses contributed prizes for a raffle. The local newspaper caught wind of the story and sent a reporter to interview Tommy and Walter. The reporter, a young woman named Jennifer, sat in their living room with her notebook, watching as Luna performed her latest trick. She'd learned to bring Walter his slippers, while Max dozed with his head on Walter's feet. "So, Mr. Mitchell," Jennifer began, "how does it feel to be reunited not just with your dogs, but with your family?" Walter was quiet for a moment, his hand absently stroking Max's head. "It feels like redemption," he said finally. "I spent 15 years letting pride keep me from my brother. I lost him before I could make it right, but somehow, through these 2 faithful dogs and 1 brave little boy, I've been given a second chance at family. It feels like Joe's final gift to me." Tommy, who had been sitting quietly, spoke up. "Grandpa Joe always said love finds a way. He was right, wasn't he? Love found a way through Max and Luna." Jennifer was wiping her eyes as she wrote, "That's beautiful, Tommy. Can you tell me about the moment you decided to save the dogs, even though it was dangerous?" Tommy thought carefully. "I wasn't really thinking about danger. I was just thinking they needed help. Grandpa Joe taught me that being scared is okay, but letting fear stop you from doing what's right isn't okay. Max and Luna were more scared than me, and they couldn't save themselves. So I had to try." "He's leaving out the part where he literally pulled Max away from an oncoming train," Sarah interjected. "The train was seconds away. If Tommy hadn't acted when he did," she couldn't finish the sentence, the memory still too frightening even after all these weeks. Walter reached over and squeezed Sarah's hand. "But he did act. That's what matters. This boy has Joe's heart, and then some." The article ran on the front page of the local section with a photo of Tommy surrounded by Max and Luna, with Walter's proud face in the background. The headline read, "Boy's Brave Rescue Reunites Family Torn Apart by Time." The response was overwhelming. Letters and emails poured in from people touched by the story. Many shared their own tales of family reconciliation or beloved pets. One letter particularly stood out, arriving on a Tuesday afternoon when Walter was teaching Tommy how to play chess. Sarah brought in the mail, holding an envelope with shaky handwriting. "Walter, this one's addressed to you." Walter opened it carefully, his hands trembling slightly, though from emotion or his lingering weakness it was hard to tell. As he read, his face went pale, then flushed with color. "What is it, Uncle Walter?" Tommy asked, concerned. Walter's voice was barely a whisper. "It's from Joe's old friend, Robert. He says Joe kept every newspaper clipping about me, every mention of my name in the local paper. When Margaret died, when I retired from teaching, everything. He kept them in a box labeled My Brother. Robert found it when he was helping clear out Joe's house." Sarah gasped. "Joe was following your life all those years?" Walter nodded, unable to speak. Tommy got up and hugged his uncle, and Luna, sensing distress, immediately pushed her way onto Walter's lap, despite being far too big to fit comfortably. "He never stopped loving you," Tommy said simply. "Just like you never stopped loving him." Walter hugged the boy tightly. Out of the mouths of babes, he murmured. You're right, Tommy. We never stopped loving each other. We just forgot how to show it. That evening, Sarah made a decision. Walter, I've been thinking. This arrangement, you staying here, it doesn't have to be temporary. Walter looked up from where he was helping Tommy with homework. What do you mean? I mean, your family. This is your home now, if you want it to be. The house feels complete with you here. Tommy loves having you here. The dogs are happy, and honestly, so am I. I miss having family around. You've brought something to this house that's been missing since Joe died. Walter's eyes filled with tears again. But your privacy, your space, are better when shared with family, Sarah finished. Besides, Tommy needs a grandfather figure. And you need us too. We need each other. Tommy jumped up, scattering homework papers. Does this mean Uncle Walter can stay forever? If he wants to, Sarah said, looking at Walter hopefully. Walter looked around the room, at the photos on the wall that now included pictures of him with the dogs, at Tommy's school projects proudly displayed on the refrigerator, at Max sleeping peacefully in a patch of sunlight, at Luna chewing contentedly on her favorite toy. This little house had become more of a home to him in a few weeks than his own empty house had been in years. I want to, he said, his voice thick with emotion. More than anything, I want to stay. Tommy whooped with joy, and Luna barked excitedly, not sure what was happening, but certain it was good. Max opened one eye, thumped his tail twice, and went back to sleep, as if to say, Of course you're staying. Where else would you go? The next few days were spent making the arrangement official. Walter's house would be rented out, with the income helping with household expenses. His furniture and belongings were gradually moved over, including a rocking chair that had belonged to his and Joe's mother. Joe always loved this chair, Walter said, as they positioned it in the corner of the living room. Mom used to rock us to sleep in it when we were tiny. Later, Joe would sit in it with his kids. Now, Tommy can enjoy it. Tommy immediately climbed into the chair, and Luna jumped up with him, making the chair creak ominously. It's perfect, Tommy declared. As Walter grew stronger, he took on more responsibilities around the house. He walked the dogs while Sarah was at work, helped Tommy with homework, and even started cooking dinner some nights. His specialty was a pot roast that had both dogs drooling and Tommy asking for seconds. Margaret's recipe, Walter explained. She learned it from Joe's and my mother. It's a Mitchell family tradition. Now it's a Walker-Mitchell tradition, Tommy said, making Walter smile. One afternoon, about 2 months after the rescue, Tommy came home from school with exciting news. Uncle Walter, the animal shelter fundraiser raised $3,000, and they want us to come to the presentation ceremony. All of us. You, me, Mom, Max, and Luna. The ceremony was held at the school the following Saturday. The gymnasium was packed with families, and there was a small stage set up at one end. Tommy, wearing his best clothes and trying not to fidget, sat with Sarah and Walter in the front row. Max and Luna, freshly groomed and wearing new collars bought specially for the occasion, sat perfectly behaved at their feet. The principal, Mr. Harrison, took the microphone. We're here today to celebrate not just a successful fundraiser, but the power of compassion and bravery. When young Tommy Walker risked his safety to save 2 dogs, he didn't know he was about to reunite a family and inspire an entire community. Tommy, would you come up here, please? Tommy walked to the stage, his face red with embarrassment, but also glowing with pride. Luna started to follow him, and the audience laughed when Tommy had to tell her to stay. Tommy, Mr. Harrison continued, your act of bravery reminded all of us that heroes come in, all sizes. You've shown us that one person, even a 5-year-old, can make a tremendous difference. The animal shelter wanted me to give you this. He handed Tommy a plaque that read, To Tommy Walker, young hero and friend to all animals. Your courage and compassion have made our community a better place. Tommy looked out at the audience, saw Uncle Walter wiping his eyes, his mother beaming with pride, and Max and Luna watching him intently. Thank you, Tommy said into the microphone, his small voice carrying across the gymnasium. But I'm not the only hero. Max and Luna are heroes too. They walked 40 miles when they were hurt and scared, trying to get home. And Uncle Walter is a hero because he was driving to make up with my Grandpa Joe when his accident happened. And my mom is a hero because she said yes when I wanted to help the dogs, and yes when Uncle Walter needed a home. And everyone here is a hero for helping the animal shelter. My Grandpa Joe used to say that kindness is contagious. When one person does something kind, it makes other people want to be kind too. So, really, we're all heroes together. The gymnasium erupted in applause. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Luna, unable to contain herself any longer, broke free and ran to Tommy on stage, jumping up to lick his face. The audience laughed and applauded even harder. After the ceremony, people lined up to meet Max and Luna, to shake Walter's hand, and to tell Tommy how inspiring he was. One elderly man pulled Walter aside. "I knew your brother Joe," he said quietly. "We worked together for 20 years. He talked about you sometimes, you know. Always with regret, but also with love. He would be so happy to see you here with his family." Walter had to excuse himself for a moment, overcome with emotion. Tommy found him outside, sitting on a bench with Max leaning against his legs. "Are you okay, Uncle Walter?" Walter pulled the boy close. "I'm more than okay, Tommy. I'm grateful. Grateful for you, for your mother, for these faithful dogs. But mostly I'm grateful for second chances. Not everyone gets them." "Grandpa Joe would be happy we're together," Tommy said confidently. "I know he would. You know what, Tommy? I think you're right, and I think he had a hand in this somehow. The accident happening where it did, Max and Luna finding their way to that exact train station, you being there at just the right moment. It's too many coincidences. It feels like Joe's hand at work." They sat quietly for a moment, an old man and a young boy, bonded by loss and love and two remarkable dogs. As spring turned to summer, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Walter was now fully recovered, walking the dogs twice daily, and even joining a senior exercise class at the community center. He'd made friends there, men his age who were impressed by his story and welcomed him into their coffee club. Tommy was thriving too. His confidence had grown tremendously since the rescue. He'd started a club at school called Animal Allies, where kids learned about animal care and raised money for various animal charities. Max and Luna were regular visitors to the club meetings, where they served as gentle ambassadors. One hot July afternoon, Tommy was in the backyard throwing a ball for Luna, while Max lounged in the shade, supervising. Walter was tending to a small vegetable garden he'd started, tomatoes and peppers and green beans climbing up stakes. "Uncle Walter," Tommy said suddenly, "do you think dogs remember everything? Like, do Max and Luna remember the accident and being lost?" Walter straightened up, considering the question. "I think they remember feelings more than events. They remember being scared and hurt, but more importantly, they remember being saved and loved. That's why Luna follows you everywhere. She remembers that you're safety and kindness." As if to prove his point, Luna abandoned the ball and trotted over to Tommy, leaning against his legs. "I remember everything about that day," Tommy said. "The way Max couldn't walk properly, how scared Luna looked, the sound of the train coming. Sometimes I dream about it." "Bad dreams?" Walter asked, concerned. "No, not bad. In my dreams, Grandpa Joe is there too. He helps me save Max and Luna. And then he hugs you and says he's sorry, and that he loves you." Walter had to turn away, ostensibly to check on his tomatoes, but really to compose himself. Even after all these months, Tommy's innocent wisdom could still undo him. That evening, Sarah suggested something that had been on her mind for a while. "What if we took a trip to visit Grandma Rose? She's been asking to meet Walter and the dogs." Walter looked nervous. "Rose wants to see me? After all these years?" "She's your sister-in-law," Sarah reminded him. "And she's 93. She says she doesn't have time for old grudges." "Can Max and Luna come?" Tommy asked. "I already asked. She said her assisted living facility allows pet visits. She's very excited to meet them." So that weekend, they all piled into Sarah's car, which was quite a feat with two large German Shepherds, and drove the 3 hours to Grandma Rose's facility. Walter was quiet during the drive, clearly anxious about the reunion. When they arrived, Rose was waiting in the common room, tiny and frail in her wheelchair, but with eyes still sharp and bright. When she saw Walter, her face crumpled. "Walter Mitchell," she said, her voice stronger than her appearance suggested. "You look just like Joe did at your age." Walter knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her weathered hands in his. "Rose, I'm so sorry. For everything. For the fight, for staying away, for missing Joe's funeral." "Hush," Rose said, though tears were streaming down her face. "You're here now. That's what matters." She looked at Tommy. "And this brave boy brought you back to us. Come here, Tommy, and give your great-grandmother a hug." Tommy hugged her carefully, aware of how fragile she seemed. Then he introduced Max and Luna, who were remarkably gentle, seeming to understand they needed to be calm around this elderly lady. Rose reached out a trembling hand to pet Max's head. Joe always said dogs were better judges of character than people. These two must have known Tommy was special to trust him so quickly. They spent the afternoon in the facility's garden, Rose telling stories about Joe and Walter as boys that had both men laughing and crying in equal measure. Other residents came over to meet the dogs, and Max and Luna basked in the attention, tails wagging constantly. "You know," Rose said as they prepared to leave, "I have something for you, Walter. I've been saving it, hoping someday I'd have the chance to give it to you." She handed him a small box. Inside was a pocket watch, old and well-worn. "That was your father's," Rose said. "Joe inherited it, but he always said it should have gone to you as the older brother. He kept meaning to give it to you, but, well, pride got in the way. I think he'd want you to have it now." Walter held the watch like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Thank you, Rose. Thank you for keeping it, for believing we'd find our way back to each other." "Family always finds a way," Rose said, winking at Tommy. "Sometimes it just needs a little help from a brave boy and two determined dogs." On the drive home, Walter kept taking out the pocket watch, running his fingers over its surface. "Our father carried this watch every day of his adult life," he told Tommy. "Joe and I used to fight over who got to wind it when we were boys. Now you can wind it," Tommy said, "and someday maybe you can teach me." "I'd like that," Walter said softly. "I'd like that very much." As summer turned to fall, Tommy started first grade. He was one of the youngest in his class, but his teacher noted that he had a maturity beyond his years. At parent-teacher conferences, she told Sarah, "Tommy has such empathy for others. When a classmate is upset, he's always the first to offer comfort, and his creative writing is exceptional. His stories about Max and Luna are the highlight of our sharing time." Walter had taken on the role of after-school caregiver, meeting Tommy at the bus stop with Max and Luna every day. The other kids loved seeing the dogs, and Tommy was very popular because of his willing to share his dog grandpa with everyone. One October afternoon, as leaves crunched under their feet on the walk home from the bus stop, Tommy asked Walter a serious question. "Uncle Walter, are you happy?" Walter was surprised by the directness of it. "Why do you ask, Tommy?" "Well, you lost your wife, and you lost Grandpa Joe, and you were hurt in the accident. That's a lot of sad things. But you smile a lot now. So I wondered if you're really happy or just pretending." Walter stopped walking and knelt down to Tommy's level, Max and Luna gathering close, as if they too wanted to hear the answer. "Tommy, I've had a lot of sadness in my life. That's true. But right now, at this moment, walking with you and these two wonderful dogs, knowing I have a home with people who love me, I'm genuinely happy. The sad things don't go away, but the happy things can be bigger than the sad things. Does that make sense?" Tommy nodded solemnly. "Like when I miss Grandpa Joe, but then I remember all the good things he taught me, and the missing doesn't hurt as much." "Exactly like that," Walter said, ruffling Tommy's hair. "You're a wise boy, Tommy Walker." "Walker Mitchell," Tommy corrected. "Mom said we're the Walker Mitchell family now." Walter's eyes misted. "Yes, we are. The Walker Mitchell family." That evening, as they all sat down to dinner, Sarah's famous spaghetti again, by popular demand, Walter cleared his throat. "I have something to tell you all," he said. "Well, ask you really." Everyone looked at him expectantly, even the dogs who were hoping for news about table scraps. "I've been thinking about Joe a lot lately, about the time we lost and the reconciliation we never got to have. And I've been thinking about Tommy's bravery and Sarah's kindness and these two faithful dogs who brought us all together." He paused, gathering his courage. "I'd like to start a foundation in Joe's memory, the Joseph Walker Foundation for Animal Rescue. It would help pay for medical care for rescued animals and support families who take in injured strays." Sarah gasped. "Walter, that's beautiful. Joe would love that." "Can I help?" Tommy asked excitedly. "Can it be my job to tell people about it?" I was hoping you'd be the junior ambassador, Walter said with a smile. After all, you're the one who started all this with your brave rescue. Max barked once, as if giving his approval, and Luna ran around the table, too excited to contain herself. I've already talked to a lawyer, Walter continued. I want to use the money from renting my house to start the foundation. It won't be huge, but it could help a few animals every year. Animals like Max and Luna who just need someone to give them a chance. Tommy jumped up and hugged Walter tightly. This is the best idea ever. Grandpa Joe will be so proud. I hope so, Walter said softly. I truly hope so. The foundation was officially established 2 months later, just before Christmas. The first recipient was a cat named Whiskers, who'd been hit by a car and needed surgery. The second was a family of puppies found abandoned in a box by the highway. Each rescue was documented with photos and stories, which Tommy helped write for the foundation's simple website. Local news picked up the story, and donations began trickling in. Nothing huge, but $5 here, $20 there, from people moved by the story of two brothers separated by pride, reunited through 2 loyal dogs and 1 brave boy. Christmas that year was magical. It was the first Christmas since Joe's death that felt truly joyful rather than bittersweet. Walter had insisted on getting a real tree, and Tommy had carefully placed ornaments, including a new one. A photo of Max and Luna in a frame made of popsicle sticks he'd crafted at school. On Christmas morning, Tommy woke to find Max and Luna on his bed, both wearing festive bandanas. He could hear Walter and Sarah already up, coffee brewing and breakfast cooking. "Merry Christmas, guys," he whispered to the dogs, who responded with gentle tail wags and morning kisses. The living room was full of presents, but the best moment came when Walter handed Tommy a wrapped box with shaking hands. "This was your Grandpa Joe's," he said. "I found it in some old boxes. I think he'd want you to have it." Inside was a leather journal, worn and filled with Joe's handwriting. It was his animal rescue diary, documenting every creature he'd helped over the years, complete with sketches and notes about their care. "Look," Walter said, turning to a page near the middle. "This entry is from when Joe and I were teenagers." The entry read, "Found injured rabbit with Walter today. W wanted to leave it, said it was too far gone, but I insisted we try. 3 weeks of care and the rabbit recovered fully, released it in the meadow behind the house. W pretended not to care, but I saw him checking on it every day. He even named it Hopscotch. My brother acts tough, but has the softest heart. Hope he never loses that." Tommy traced the words with his finger. "Grandpa Joe loved you even when you were fighting." "And I loved him," Walter said. "I just wish I'd told him." "He knew," Sarah said softly. "Just like you knew?" Love doesn't always need words. Luna barked in agreement, or perhaps she was just impatient for her Christmas breakfast. Either way, it broke the emotional moment and had everyone laughing. As winter gave way to spring again, the foundation grew slowly but steadily. They had helped 15 animals in their first 6 months, and each success story brought more attention and donations. Tommy spoke at his school assembly about the foundation, with Max and Luna as his assistants, and raised another $1,000. One April afternoon, a year after the train station rescue, they received a special request. A family had found an injured German Shepherd puppy, abandoned and sick. They couldn't afford the vet bills, but had heard about the foundation. Walter, Tommy, Sarah, Max, and Luna all went to the vet clinic where the puppy was being treated. It was tiny, maybe 8 weeks old, with one ear that stood up and one that flopped over. "Oh," Tommy breathed, "she's perfect." The puppy, despite being sick and scared, wagged her tiny tail when Tommy approached. "She needs a foster home while she recovers," Dr. Martinez said. She was still their vet and had become a good friend. "I don't suppose you know anyone who might take her?" Tommy looked at his mother with pleading eyes. Sarah looked at Walter, who was already smitten with the puppy. Max and Luna were sniffing the little one with interest. "Well," Sarah said with a laugh, "what's one more?" The puppy, whom Tommy immediately named Hope, came home with them that day. Max and Luna adopted her instantly, with Luna becoming a doting big sister, and Max, a patient uncle figure who tolerated the puppy's ear chewing with dignity. As Tommy watched Hope play in the backyard, tumbling over her own feet while Max and Luna supervised, Walter put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "You know what today is?" Walter asked. April 15th, Tommy replied. 1 year since you saved Max and Luna. 1 year since our family came together. Tommy looked up at his uncle. The best year ever. You know, Tommy, I've been thinking. The foundation is doing well, but I want to do more. I want to teach kids what Joe taught you, how to be kind to animals, how to be brave when it matters. What would you think about starting a program where we visit schools and tell our story? Tommy's eyes lit up. With Max and Luna? With Max and Luna, Walter confirmed. We could teach kids about animal safety, about compassion, about how helping others can change your whole life. Yes, Tommy shouted, causing Hope to come running, her floppy ear bouncing. Can we start at my school? I've already talked to your principal. We start next month. And so they did. Walter, Tommy, Max, and Luna became regular visitors to schools throughout the district. Walter would tell the story of the rescue. Tommy would demonstrate how to approach scared animals safely. And Max and Luna would charm everyone with their gentle nature and obvious love for their family. The program was such a success that other districts requested visits. Soon, they were booked every weekend, spreading their message of compassion and bravery to hundreds of children. One day, after a particularly moving presentation where several children had cried during the story, a teacher approached Walter. Mr. Mitchell, I have to tell you something. My father and his brother haven't spoken in 10 years. Some silly argument about property. After hearing your story, I'm going to try to get them to reconcile. Life's too short for such foolishness. Walter's eyes filled with tears. If our story can help even one family heal, then everything, the pain, the loss, the years apart, it was all worth it. Summer arrived with a special surprise. The mayor wanted to give Tommy a citizenship award for his bravery and for the positive impact the foundation had made on the community. The ceremony would be held at the train station, at the exact spot where Tommy had rescued Max and Luna. The morning of the ceremony, Tommy was nervous. What if I have to give a speech? What if I mess up? You won't mess up, Walter assured him. Just speak from your heart, like you always do. The train platform was decorated with balloons and banners. A small stage had been set up right where Tommy had pulled Max to safety. The crowd was bigger than expected. Dozens of families whose pets had been helped by the foundation, Tommy's classmates and teachers, people from Walter's senior center, and many who simply knew the story and wanted to be part of the celebration. The mayor, a tall woman with kind eyes, called Tommy to the stage. Max and Luna, wearing special celebration bandanas, walked with him, and Walter and Sarah stood nearby. Tommy Walker, the mayor began, 1 year ago, you made a split-second decision that could have cost you your life. You chose to save 2 dogs you'd never met before, and in doing so, you set in motion a chain of events that has touched hundreds of lives. Your bravery reunited a family, inspired a foundation that has saved dozens of animals, and shown our entire community what it means to be truly courageous. She presented Tommy with a medal and a certificate. The crowd applauded, and Tommy felt his face turn red. Would you like to say something? The mayor asked gently. Tommy looked out at the crowd, at his mother's proud face, at Uncle Walter's encouraging nod, at Max and Luna sitting perfectly at his feet. He thought about Grandpa Joe, who he still missed every day but whose lessons lived on in everything Tommy did. My Grandpa Joe used to say that we're all connected, Tommy began, his small voice carrying across the platform. He said when you help someone, even a little bit, it creates ripples like a stone in water. When I saw Max and Luna that day, I didn't think about being a hero. I just thought about how scared they were and how they needed help. I thought about what Grandpa Joe would do. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But the real heroes are Max and Luna. They walked 40 miles when they were hurt and scared because they loved their owner so much. And Uncle Walter is a hero because he was trying to make peace with my grandpa when his accident happened. And my mom is a hero because she opened our home to Uncle Walter and the dogs without even thinking twice about it. Tommy looked directly at Walter. Uncle Walter and Grandpa Joe didn't talk for 15 years because of a fight. But love was still there, waiting. Sometimes love needs help to find its way. Max and Luna helped love find its way back to our family. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. Walter was openly sobbing, and even the mayor was wiping her eyes. So I want to say thank you, Tommy continued. Thank you to everyone who helped Max and Luna. Thank you to everyone who donated to the foundation. Thank you for showing me that Grandpa Joe was right. Kindness really is contagious, And most of all, thank you to Max and Luna for bringing Uncle Walter home to us." The applause was thunderous. Luna, unable to contain herself, jumped up and licked Tommy's face, making everyone laugh. Max maintained his dignity, but his tail was wagging so hard his whole body shook. After the ceremony, as people mingled and shared their own rescue stories, an elderly man approached Walter. He looked familiar, but Walter couldn't place him. "Walter Mitchell?" the man said hesitantly. "It's me, Robert Chen, Joe's friend from work." Walter's eyes widened. Robert was the one who had sent the letter about Joe keeping newspaper clippings. "Robert!" "Thank you for your letter. It meant more than you know." Robert smiled. "I have something else for you. I've been waiting for the right time." He handed Walter a small USB drive. "It's video from Joe's retirement party 5 years ago. There's something on there I think you should see." That evening, the whole family gathered around the computer as Walter plugged in the USB drive. The video showed Joe at his retirement party, laughing with colleagues, clearly happy but also wistful. Then someone off camera asked, "Joe, what are you going to do with all your free time?" Joe's face grew serious. "There's someone I need to make peace with. My brother, Walter. We've been stubborn fools for too long. Life's too short for grudges. I'm going to drive to his house next week and apologize. I don't care if he slams the door in my face. At least I'll have tried." The video continued, but Walter couldn't see it through his tears. Joe had been planning to reconcile. He'd wanted to make peace too. "He never made it to next week," Walter whispered. "The heart attack was 3 days after this party." Tommy climbed into Walter's lap, something he rarely did anymore now that he was getting bigger. "But you tried, Uncle Walter. You both tried, and even though you didn't get to say sorry to each other, you found your way back to family. That's what matters." Sarah wrapped her arms around both of them. "Joe's love brought you here, Walter. Through Max and Luna, through Tommy's brave heart, through all the twists and turns, love found a way." Max and Luna, sensing the emotion in the room, pressed close to their humans. Hope, now fully recovered and officially adopted, squeezed between them, her one floppy ear making her look perpetually curious. As summer turned to fall once more, the Walker-Mitchell household had settled into a rhythm that felt like it had existed forever. Walter was now the official coordinator of the foundation, which had expanded to include an education program about animal safety and compassion. Tommy was his enthusiastic assistant, and their school visits were booked months in advance. Max, now fully recovered though moving a bit slower with age, had become a certified therapy dog, visiting nursing homes and hospitals with Walter. His calm, gentle presence brought comfort to many. Luna, ever energetic, despite being middle-aged in dog years, excelled at school visits where her playful nature delighted children. Hope was in training to follow in their paw steps. One November evening, as the first snow of the season began to fall, Tommy found Walter sitting in his mother's rocking chair, looking at an old photo album. "What are you looking at, Uncle Walter?" Walter showed him the page, photos of him and Joe as children playing with a scruffy-looking dog. "That was our first rescue," Walter said. "We must have been about your age. Found him in a drainage ditch during a storm. Mom said we couldn't keep him, but we begged and pleaded until she gave in. Named him Storm." "You and Grandpa Joe were just like me," Tommy exclaimed. "We were," Walter agreed. "And you know what? I think Joe made sure you would be like us. All those lessons he taught you, all that time showing you how to be gentle with animals, he was preparing you. Preparing me for what? For saving Max and Luna, for bringing me home, for continuing the work he and I started as boys." Walter closed the album and looked at Tommy seriously. "You're our legacy, Tommy. The best parts of both of us, living on in you." Tommy thought about this for a moment. "Then I better make sure to teach other kids what you and Grandpa Joe taught me." So, the legacy keeps going. "That's my boy," Walter said, ruffling Tommy's hair. "That's exactly right." Later that evening, as the family sat down to dinner, pot roast tonight, Walter's specialty, Sarah raised her glass of apple cider. "I want to make a toast," she said, "to unexpected families, to second chances, to brave boys and loyal dogs, and to Joe, who somehow orchestrated all of this from heaven." "To Joe," Walter echoed, raising his glass. "To Grandpa Joe," Tommy added, lifting his milk. Max barked once, Luna yipped, and Hope, not to be left out, let out a tiny puppy howl that had everyone laughing. As they ate, Tommy suddenly said, "You know what? We should write a book about Max and Luna, about everything that happened, so other people can know that it's never too late for families to come back together." Sarah and Walter exchanged glances. "That's a wonderful idea, Tommy," Sarah said. "Would you want to help write it?" "We could all write it together," Tommy said excitedly. "Uncle Walter could write about him and Grandpa Joe as kids. Mom, you could write about after Grandpa died. And I could write about saving Max and Luna." "And what would Max and Luna contribute?" Walter asked with a smile. "Paw prints on the cover," Tommy said, making everyone laugh. The book project became their winter activity. Every evening after homework and dinner, they would gather in the living room, Walter in the rocking chair with his laptop, Sarah on the couch with her notebook, Tommy at the coffee table with his colored pencils drawing illustrations, and all three dogs arranged around them like furry furniture. They wrote about love and loss, about pride and forgiveness, about the unbreakable bonds between humans and animals. They wrote about Grandpa Joe, keeping his memory alive in stories and lessons. They wrote about the train platform, that moment when everything could have ended tragically, but instead became the beginning of something beautiful. By spring, they had a complete manuscript. A local publisher, touched by their story, agreed to publish it with all, proceeds going to the Joseph Walker Foundation for Animal Rescue. The book launch was held at the train station because where else could it be? The same platform where Tommy had risked everything to save two scared dogs was transformed into a celebration of love, family, and second chances. Tommy, now 7 and even more confident, stood at the microphone without fear. "This story started with 2 dogs who just wanted to go home," he said, looking out at the crowd of supporters, friends, and family, including Grandma Rose, who had made the trip specially for the occasion. Max and Luna walked 40 miles because love told them to keep going. They didn't give up, even when it was hard and scary and painful. And because they didn't give up, our family found each other again. He paused, looking at Walter, who was holding Max's leash with one hand and wiping tears with the other. "My Grandpa Joe and Uncle Walter lost 15 years because of a fight, but love was patient. Love waited. And love used 2 German Shepherds and 1 scared little boy to bring everyone back together. That's the real miracle. Not that I saved Max and Luna, but that they saved us." The crowd erupted in applause. Someone shouted, "We love you, Tommy!" And others took up the chant. As the celebration continued, with people buying books and petting the dogs and sharing their own stories of rescue and redemption, Walter pulled Tommy aside. "I have something for you," he said, pulling out a small wrapped box. "I've been waiting for the right moment." Inside was the pocket watch Grandma Rose had given Walter, the one that had belonged to their father. "But, Uncle Walter, this is yours," Tommy protested. "And now it's yours," Walter said firmly, "to pass on to your children someday, along with the stories of Grandpa Joe and me, of Max and Luna, of how love always finds a way home." Tommy held the watch carefully, understanding the weight of what he'd been given. Not just an object, but a responsibility to keep the family's stories alive, to continue the legacy of compassion and bravery. As the sun set over the train platform, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the Walker-Mitchell family stood together. Sarah, Walter, Tommy, Max, Luna, and Hope. They were an unlikely family, brought together by tragedy and triumph, by loss and love, by 2 faithful dogs, and 1 brave boy's split-second decision to help. "Hey, Uncle Walter," Tommy said suddenly, "do you think Grandpa Joe can see us? Do you think he knows how everything turned out?" Walter looked up at the darkening sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. "I know he can, Tommy. And I know he's proud of you, proud of all of us, proud that love won in the end." Max leaned against Walter's legs, Luna pressed against Tommy's side, and Hope danced between them all, chasing fireflies that had begun to blink in the gathering dusk. "Come on," Sarah said, wrapping an arm around Tommy's shoulders. "Let's go. Home." And they did, all of them together, a family forged not by blood alone, but by choice, by courage, by compassion, and by the unbreakable bonds that form when love refuses to give up. As they walked away from the train platform, Tommy looked back one more time at the spot where everything had changed. He could almost see it, the scared dogs, the approaching train, his younger self making the choice that would alter so many lives. "Thank you," he whispered, not sure if he was thanking the universe, Grandpa Joe, or maybe just the part of himself that had chosen bravery over safety. Luna heard him and licked his hand, as if to say, "No, thank you." And in that moment, Tommy understood something important. Every act of love, no matter how small or dangerous or seemingly insignificant, creates ripples that spread far beyond what we can see. His one moment of bravery had reunited a broken family, saved countless animals through the foundation, inspired hundreds of children to be more compassionate, and brought joy to so many lives. But most importantly, it had brought Uncle Walter home, given Max and Luna the happy ending they deserved, and shown everyone that it's never too late for love to find its way. The next morning brought a surprise. The phone rang early, and Sarah answered to find a producer from a national morning show on the line. They had heard about the book, about the foundation, about the incredible story of the Walker-Mitchell family. "We'd love to have you all on the show," the producer said, "including the dogs, of course." This is exactly the kind of story America needs to hear, a story of hope, healing, and the power of compassion. Sarah looked at Walter and Tommy, who had gathered around to listen. Tommy's eyes were huge with excitement. Walter looked nervous but pleased. "What do you think?" Sarah asked them. "Will Max and Luna be okay on TV?" Tommy asked, always thinking of the dogs first. "We'll make sure they're comfortable," Sarah assured him. "It's a chance to tell more people about the foundation, to maybe help more animals." "Then yes," Tommy said. "Let's do it." 2 weeks later, they found themselves in New York City, in the green room of a major television studio. Max and Luna were remarkably calm, as if they understood the importance of the moment. Hope, younger and more excitable, had stayed home with a neighbor. When their segment began, the host introduced them with tears already in her eyes from watching the pre-recorded video of their story. "This is a story that proves love never really dies," she said. "It just sometimes needs a little help finding its way home." The interview was a blur of questions and answers, of Max and Luna charming the audience, of Tommy speaking with a confidence that belied his 7 years. But the moment that went viral, the moment that would be shared millions of times online, came when the host asked Walter a simple question. "Mr. Mitchell, if you could tell your brother one thing now, what would it be?" Walter was quiet for a long moment, his hand resting on Max's head. Then he looked directly at the camera. "Joe, I would tell you that your grandson has your heart, that every lesson you taught him lives on, that Max and Luna brought me home, just like you always brought home strays when we were kids, and that love won, Joe. Despite everything, the years, the pride, the stubbornness, love won. Your love for Tommy, teaching him to be brave and kind, Tommy's love for 2 scared dogs, the dog's love for me, and my love for you, which never died, not for a single day of those 15 years. Love won, brother. It always does, eventually." There wasn't a dry eye in the studio. The host had to take a moment to compose herself. Even the camera operators were wiping their eyes. Tommy reached over and took Walter's hand. "He knows, Uncle Walter. I'm sure he knows." The appearance on the show changed everything. Donations poured into the foundation from all over the country. Publishers wanted to distribute their book nationally. Schools from other states requested virtual visits. But more importantly, they received thousands of messages from people who had been inspired to reconcile with estranged family members, to adopt rescue animals, to teach their children about compassion. One message stood out. It was from a woman in California. "My brother and I haven't spoken in 20 years. We fought over something so stupid I can't even remember what it was. After seeing your story, I called him. We're meeting for coffee next week. Thank you for reminding me that pride is a cold companion compared to family." Tommy insisted on personally responding to as many messages as possible, with Walter's help. Each response ended with the same line: "Love finds a way." Sometimes it just needs a little help. As their story spread, so did its impact. The foundation was able to help more animals than ever before. They established a scholarship program for veterinary students who promised to provide free or reduced-cost care for rescue animals. They created an educational curriculum about animal compassion that was adopted by schools across the state. But for Tommy, the best part was still the simple daily life with his unusual family. Mornings, walking Max and Luna and Hope. Afternoons doing homework with Uncle Walter's help. Evenings with everyone gathered in the living room, each doing their own thing but together. One evening, as the first anniversary of the book launch approached, Tommy made an announcement. "I want to do something special for the anniversary," he said. "Something for other kids like me who maybe have to be brave." "What did you have in mind?" Sarah asked. "A Brave Kids Club," Tommy said. "For kids who have to do hard things, like standing up to bullies or dealing with sick parents or being different. We could meet once a month and share stories and help each other be brave." Walter's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant, Tommy. Joe would love that idea." The Brave Kids Club launched that summer, meeting in the community center with Max and Luna as the official mascot therapy dogs. Children who were facing challenges came together to share, support, and find strength in each other. One little girl, Maria, who was dealing with her parents' divorce, said, "When I'm scared, I think about Tommy in the train. If he could save those dogs, I can handle my problems." A boy named Jackson, who used a wheelchair and was nervous about starting at a new school, found confidence in petting Max, who didn't care about wheelchairs, only about giving and receiving love. The club grew, spreading to other communities. Each chapter was started by someone who had been touched by the Walker Mitchell story, creating a network of compassion and courage that stretched far beyond what any of them had imagined. On Tommy's 8th birthday, they held a party at the train station platform. It had become a tradition now, celebrating where their family truly began. The mayor came, as did Dr. Martinez, Nancy from the hospital, James the railway worker who had helped pull Tommy to safety, and dozens of families who had been helped by the foundation. Grandma Rose, now 95, and frail but still sharp, made the journey one more time. "I needed to see where it happened," she said, "where my great-grandson chose love over safety." As Tommy blew out his candles on the train platform, with Max and Luna and Hope at his feet, surrounded by the family that had formed in the most unexpected way, he made a wish. Later, Walter asked him what he'd wished for. "I can't tell you, or it won't come true," Tommy said with a grin. Then, more seriously, "But I will say this. I wished for everyone to find their Max and Luna. Everyone to find the thing that brings their family back together." As the celebration continued into the evening, with music and laughter filling the platform where once there had been terror and urgency, Sarah found herself standing next to Walter, watching Tommy play with the dogs. "Can you believe it's been over 2 years?" she asked. Walter shook his head. "It feels like yesterday, and a lifetime ago at the same time. I was so lost, Sarah. Not just physically after the accident, but emotionally, spiritually. I'd given up on family, on connection, on everything, really. And now?" Walter gestured to the scene before them. Tommy laughing as Hope tried to catch bubbles someone was blowing, Max resting dignifiedly but with his tail wagging, Luna still trying to be part of every single activity despite her advancing age. "Now I have everything," he said simply. "Joe gave me everything by raising that remarkable boy." "We gave each other everything," Sarah corrected. "That's what family does." As the sun set on another anniversary, painting the sky in familiar shades of orange and pink, Tommy called everyone together. "I want to say something," he announced, standing on the same bench where his mother had told him to wait that fateful morning. Everyone gathered around, family, friends, supporters, and of course, the dogs. 2 years ago, I was just a scared little kid trying to be brave like my Grandpa Joe taught me. I saw 2 dogs who needed help, and I helped them. But really, they helped me. They helped all of us. He looked at Walter. Max and Luna brought me an uncle I didn't know I needed. They brought Uncle Walter a family when he thought he'd lost everyone. They brought my mom someone to help carry the sadness of losing Grandpa Joe. Tommy paused, gathering his thoughts like the natural storyteller he'd become. But most importantly, they taught us that love doesn't end when someone dies, or when families fight, or when accidents happen. Love waits. It hides in the most unexpected places, in the eyes of a scared dog, in the courage of a small boy, in the heart of a lonely old man who never stopped missing his brother. He looked out at all the faces watching him, all the lives that had been touched by this story. Grandpa Joe used to say that we're all connected, that kindness creates ripples. But I think it's more than that. I think love creates bridges, bridges across time, across anger, across loss. Max and Luna were our bridge. And now, through the foundation in the book and the Brave Kids Club, we're building bridges for others. Tommy reached down and patted each dog in turn. Max, now gray around the muzzle, but still dignified. Luna, still energetic despite her years. And Hope, young and eager and full of promise. So, thank you, he concluded. Thank you to everyone who helped. Thank you to everyone who donated or adopted a rescue animal or made peace with someone they'd been fighting with. Thank you for proving that Grandpa Joe was right. Love always finds a way. The applause was thunderous, but it was quickly drowned out by the sound of an approaching train. Not a dangerous express this time, but the regular evening commuter train, slowing to stop at the platform. As the train doors opened and passengers emerged, many stopped to stare at the celebration, wondering what was happening. A few recognized the dogs or Tommy from news stories and social media. One man, stepping off the train with a briefcase and tired expression, stopped dead when he saw the gathering. Are you the boy who saved those dogs?" he asked Tommy. Tommy nodded, suddenly shy again. The man set down his briefcase and shook Tommy's hand solemnly. "My daughter read your book to me. She's 6, and she wants to be brave like you. She made me promise to adopt a rescue dog, and we did. A little beagle named Courage. You changed our lives, young man." As more passengers stopped to share their own stories of how the Walker-Mitchell family had inspired them, Tommy realized something profound. The ripples Grandpa Joe had talked about had become waves. One moment of bravery, one act of compassion had spread far beyond anything he could have imagined. Later that night, as the family finally made their way home, tired but happy, Tommy asked Walter a question that had been on his mind. "Uncle Walter, do you think every family has a Max and Luna? Something that could bring them back together if they let it?" Walter considered this carefully. "I think every family has the potential for reconciliation. Sometimes it's dogs, sometimes it's children, sometimes it's tragedy or joy or just time passing. But yes, I think there's always a bridge waiting to be built. People just have to be brave enough to cross it. Like you were brave, driving to see Grandpa Joe that day. And like Joe was brave, planning to come see me. And like you were brave, saving Max and Luna." Walter smiled. "Bravery runs in this family, it seems." As they pulled into their driveway, the porch light welcoming them home, Tommy had one more question. "What do you think our next adventure will be?" Sarah laughed. "Hopefully something a little less dramatic than the last one." But Walter winked at Tommy. "Oh, I don't know. With this family and these dogs, I've learned to expect the unexpected, and to be grateful for every surprise." That night, as had become tradition, Tommy sat down to write in the journal Grandpa Joe had left him. He wrote about the anniversary celebration, about the man with the beagle named Courage, about the Brave Kids Club and the foundation and all the animals they had helped. But mostly, he wrote about family, about Uncle Walter teaching him chess and telling stories about Grandpa Joe, about his mom's strength and kindness, about Max's dignified love, Luna's endless enthusiasm, and Hope's boundless puppy energy. "Dear Grandpa Joe," he wrote, "Uncle Walter says you would be proud of us. I think you are proud of us. I think you can see everything. How Uncle Walter smiles now. How Mom isn't so sad anymore. How Max and Luna are happy and safe. Thank you for teaching me to be brave. Thank you for making sure I was at the train station that day. Thank you for sending Uncle Walter back to us. Love, Tommy." As he closed the journal, Luna padded into his room, followed by Hope. Max was already asleep at the foot of Uncle Walter's bed, keeping his faithful watch. "Come on, girls," Tommy whispered, patting his bed. "Time for sleep." Luna jumped up and curled against him, while Hope sprawled across his feet. Through the wall, he could hear Uncle Walter's gentle snoring and his mother turning pages in her book. Everyone was home. Everyone was safe. Everyone was loved. And somewhere, Tommy was certain, Grandpa Joe was smiling. The story of the Walker-Mitchell family continued to spread and inspire. The book was translated into multiple languages. The foundation expanded nationally. The Brave Kids Club became an international organization. But, for Tommy, the greatest achievement would always be that moment on the train platform when he chose love over fear, compassion over safety. That moment when a 5-year-old boy's brave heart changed everything. Years would pass. Tommy would grow up, go to college, become a veterinarian like Dr. Martinez. Max would live to the remarkable age of 15, passing peacefully with his family around him. Luna would make it to 13, playful until the very end. Hope would become a certified therapy dog, visiting hospitals and schools for many years. Walter would live with them until his own peaceful passing at 91, surrounded by family, both human and canine, grateful for the second chance at love he'd been given. But the legacy would continue. The Joseph Walker Foundation for Animal Rescue would save thousands of animals. The Brave Kids Club would help countless children find their courage. And the story of two dogs, one brave boy, and a family reunited would continue to remind people that love always finds a way. It just sometimes needs a little help. And sometimes that help comes on four legs, with wagging tails and boundless faith that everything will be okay if we just keep walking toward home. If this story touched your heart, please like and share it with others who need to be reminded that it's never too late for love to find its way home. Comment below with your own rescue story or a time when an animal changed your life. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories of courage, compassion, and the unbreakable bonds between humans and animals. Together, we can create more ripples of kindness in this world.